Comrades, as you can see, I have traveled through time and ended up in 1955. When Zhou Yimeng woke up, she immediately sensed something was wrong. Where was her super soft princess size bed measuring 1.8 by 2 meters? Why did she wake up with her whole body aching all over? Opening her eyes, she saw not the creamy, white ceiling and modern chandelier of her exquisite bedroom, but a shabby old wooden ceiling. The walls were plastered with dull gray mud. Her bed was pieced together from wooden planks, covered only with a straw mat. No wonder she felt so sore. Sunlight filtered dimly through the pasted wooden window. A vague damp, earthy smell hung in the air. Something was very, very wrong. Where on earth was this? Drawing on years of reading time, travel novels, Zhou Yimeng had a thought. Could she have traveled through time? Zhou Yimeng lifted her small hand. That settled it. This bony, dark-skinned hand with thin calluses was definitely not her own soft, fair hands that had never done a day's hard work. This tiny dark hand suggested the body she inhabited belonged to someone quite young. The bones of her wrist looked so slender they might snap with a light squeeze. She had once stood 168 centimeters tall and weighed only 86 kg, yet she had never been this gaunt. Her bones looked barely fully developed. There was no mirror in the room, so she could not tell her exact age, though she guessed she could not be older than 15. Countless thoughts raced through Zhou Yimeng's mind in an instant. With a bitter look, she whispered cautiously toward the air system. A brisk electronic voice rang beside her ear. I am here. Greetings, host. I am your sign, in System 7538. Your habit of idling at home and relying on your family stirred strong aspirations from your parents, which drew me here. I have brought you to 1955. Through labor-based self-improvement, you are expected to grow into an optimistic, positive-minded, motivated young person of the new era. I look forward to working with you, Wink. Zhou Yimeng was stunned, furious, and utterly disbelieving. She shouted angrily at the system, "Send me back right now. I want to go home. This is kidnapping. My parents only nag me sometimes. They never abandoned me. What gives you the right to make decisions for me? And let me set the record straight. I chose to stay home because of tough social conditions. I do have a job as a freelancer, I just haven't gotten many commissions lately. Most importantly, I am their only child. What will happen to my parents and my grandmother if I vanish? They will be distraught. Please send me back. I will turn over a new leaf the second I get home and find a proper job. I do not want to be stuck in this era." Tears rolled down her cheeks as sorrow overwhelmed her. She knew she was lazy and unaccomplished, yet she had never harmed anyone. She had never realized her parents felt so strongly about her idle lifestyle. She had once moved north to chase her dreams, only to give up easily when hardship set in. Supported by her parents' affection, she owned a small apartment in Beijing and lived off their financial support, drifting through each day. She knew this way of life was bad, yet she could not change it. She had tried, only to learn she gave up far too easily. But she missed home terribly. Every evening she called her family at dinner time. If she failed to answer calls or reply to messages, they would panic. Her parents were already in their 50s. Losing their only daughter would be devastating. She could not bear to imagine their fear and grief. The system's bright electronic tone persisted, as though Zhou Yimeng were throwing an unreasonable tantrum. Please stay calm, host. A sound shield is active. Our conversation cannot be overheard. Communicate with 7538 in your mind from now on to avoid drawing attention. According to my records, you graduated in 2020. Over 6 years, you worked a total of 67 days and earned only 23,054 yuan, an almost negligible amount. You avoided social contact, turned down auditions, lay at home all night reading novels and scrolling your phone while ordering takeout. You abandoned your own future, made no life plans, cut yourself off from others, and shut yourself away. System projections show you faced a 72% risk of sudden death within 1 year, an 85% risk of developing cancer within 5 years, and a 99.99% chance of taking your own life once your parents passed away. Rest assured, host. I am a formally registered system under the Time, Travel Bureau, and all procedures comply with official regulations. Before transport, I sent you a humanitarian inquiry. Since you gave no reply, your silence counted as consent. Once you complete your self-improvement in this world and pass away, I will return you to the exact moment you left. Nobody in your original world will remember any of this. Hearing this, Zhou Yimeng's eyes lit up. If I die here, I get to go back? She scrambled off the bed and hurled herself toward the earthen wall. Thud. The wall shook slightly, showering bits of dirt down onto her. The impact sent her tumbling backwards onto the ground. Her forehead reddened and swelled into a small bump. That had not worked. Mud walls did not kill people. She brushed dirt off her clothes and headed outside, searching for another way to end her life. The system sighed electronically. Do not act rashly, host. I meant you may return only after finishing your self-improvement. If you try to harm yourself now, I will simply revive you. This body was created by me. I can repair any damage. Do not resist. I was built to help you build a better life. Realizing there was no way out, Zhou Yiming trundled back to the bed to collect her thoughts. When exactly did you ask for my consent? I never noticed. What exactly does this labor-based self-improvement involve? You call yourself a sign in system. Do I get supplies or skills by checking in at different locations like in novels? Or do I receive daily check and gift packs? A translucent screen popped up before her eyes as the system spoke again. Host, I am a sign in system. Every day I will assign one task suited to your abilities, covering physical labor and academic learning. Completing a task earns you one sign in point. You may spend these points to check in at various locations and receive supplies or skills. Note that I discourage getting rewards without effort. When you unlock a skill, you still need to practice it yourself. I only provide learning environments and virtual tutors to assist you. The panel was clean and simple. At the top left corner showed the date, time and weather, May 18th, 1955, 5:38 a.m., cloudy, 20 degrees Celsius, high 28 degrees Celsius, low 16 degrees Celsius. In the center was today's task, still blink. The bottom left corner red sign in points, 0. The bottom right corner held a backpack, which opened to show empty storage slots. Zhou Yiming guessed this was an inventory space. She wondered whether it could hold objects not given by the system. She picked up her pillow sewn from old cloth stuffed with grass, seed husks. To her surprise, it vanished into the backpack. At least she had one useful cheat ability. She cleared her throat and asked the system, "You said this body was created by you. Do I have family? Do I have memories? What is my name? How am I supposed to survive here knowing nothing? Rest assured, host. I have prepared a complete set of social connections for you. Please wait while memories are transferred." Zhou Yiming, who had been lying sprawled across the bed, blacked out at once. Scenes from this 14-year-old girl's short life played inside her head like a movie. This girl shared her name, Zhou Yiming. She lived in Shuanghe Village in Jia City, Zhejiang Province, a settlement sitting between two rivers. The household held 5 people, her grandfather and grandmother, plus 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. The eldest daughter, her great-aunt, had married and moved to the city. She worked for a neighborhood office while her husband was a clerk in the district government. They had 2 sons, and their dual-income household lived comfortably. The eldest son was great, Uncle Wang Wujie. He had learned basic literacy and math education classes and worked as the work-point recorder for the production team. He had 2 sons, one 5 years older than Zhou Yiming and another 3 years older. Although they lived in the village, the grandparents had built 3 extra rooms next to the old house. After marriage, great-uncle's family moved into those rooms. They visited occasionally for family meals, and great-aunt-in-law sometimes brought over food or small gifts to honor the elders. Her present-day father was the youngest son, Zhou Wenchang. Unusually for the youngest son who stayed to care for aging parents, he took his mother's surname rather than his father's. Zhou Wenchang was glib and undisciplined, with many idle friends. He slacked off during farm work and spent time chatting with other villagers. Other men earned full work points each day, yet he rarely earned more than 5 points, about the same as married women in the village. Still, he had good qualities. Tall, thin, and fair-skinned, he looked like a scholar despite being illiterate before literacy classes. He was sweet-tongued, cared for his parents, and doted on his wife and children. He also had a talent for cooking, just like his mother. Villages nearby often hired him for weddings and funerals. He earned small payments and sometimes brought home meat or wedding candies for the family. Her mother, Shintingwei, had fled wartime chaos. She came from Suzhou. During the Japanese invasion, her family fled to this village. Her beauty caught Zhou Wenchang's eye, and he insisted stubbornly on marrying her. His parents finally gave in. Xintingyue's own parents had passed away some years earlier, and she had seen to their final rites. Gentle-looking Xintingyue was actually quick, tempered, and energetic. She had endured great hardship during her flight and worked tirelessly in the fields, regularly earning 8 work points. She managed all household affairs efficiently and could read and write. Yet, because she was an outsider refugee, she always felt unsure of her standing in the Zhou family. For all her competence, she seldom voiced her opinions. Then there was 14-year-old Zhou Yiming herself. 1 year earlier, she had finished upper primary school but failed the entrance exam for the town's junior high. She dropped out and started working in the fields. She earned barely 2 work points each day and had grown dark from constant sun exposure. When the memory playback ended, Zhou Yimeng woke up. She now understood her current reality. No, she still had to work farmland. Mental images flashed before her eyes, scorching sunlight, her small frame carrying heavy bamboo baskets to gather pigweed and dig wild greens. In 2 months, rice harvest would arrive, breaking labor that would drain nearly all her strength. She had never endured such hardship in her past life. She felt utterly defeated. System, if you built this body, why could you not assign me to a better family? We do not need wealth, just not endless farm labor. Why make me a school dropout? Why could I not keep studying? The system's cheerful voice showed no sign of noticing her despair. Host, my purpose is to guide you to find meaning in life through labor, so you may become a responsible, positive person for society, your family, and yourself. Your present circumstances fulfill all improvement program requirements. You have loving family members and a gentle environment. You are far more fortunate than most people alive in this era. You may choose to pursue further education through your own efforts. Sign, in System 7538 will support your growth. Fine then. What is today's first task? Zhou Yiming asked. Since she could not change her situation, she might as well earn sign in points to improve her standard of living. She refused to spend her whole life farming, even lazing about required comfort. Ding. Today's task, fill 1 basket with pigweed. The system panel popped up. A 1-minute instructional video was attached to teach her how to identify pigweed. Though she told herself she must adapt and hoped her system cheat might improve her circumstances, Zhou Yiming lingered in bed for another full hour. Only when her mother knocked and called her for breakfast did she drag herself out. She felt exhausted before doing any work at all. In her old life, she often skipped breakfast entirely. Zhou Yiming sat alone in the main room. The rest of the family had already left. Her mother was tending the vegetable garden out back, waiting for her to finish eating so she could go out to work. She held a bowl of sweet potato congee and sipped listlessly. The sweet potatoes were not the fine varieties she knew from modern times. Stringy fibers scratched her throat. The grain was old and tasted stale. On the table sat only a small plate of yellowish, green pickled vegetables, hardly appetizing. She slurped her congee slowly while studying her strange yet familiar surroundings. Her lips drooped. This place was really poor. Walls were packed earth, only pillars and roof used timber. She feared leaks whenever rain fell. As a modern-day young woman, she had never experienced such hardship. Even at her poorest in college, she had lived in a 6-person dormitory with cement floors and white walls, eating hearty canteen meals. After graduation, her parents bought her a nice small apartment in Beijing. Every take-out meal she ordered included meat dishes. She wrinkled her nose at the congee. Though her soul rejected it, her body instinctively finished every drop. Shortly after breakfast, the village bell rang, signaling the start of field work. Xintingyue walked over, mud and water droplets still clinging to her clothes from the vegetable plot. She gathered the bowls, washed Zhou Yiming's bowl efficiently, and put it away in the kitchen. Zhou Yiming remained dazed, as if trapped inside a dream. She barely caught what her mother was saying. She only heard her mother plan to take her to pull weeds in the fields. Then she remembered her system task. Mom, I will not go pull weeds. I am going to gather pigweed instead. Xintingyue looked surprised. Her daughter normally hated gathering pigweed. Searching everywhere was tiring, baskets grew heavy, and the work point reward was low. 2 full baskets earned only 1 work point. Running back and forth all day might net 3 or 4 points at most. Still, she did not question it. Since Zhou Yiming earned so little anyway, she might as well treat it as wandering outdoors. She did not expect much work from her teenage daughter. Only her husband insisted that the girl work in the fields. Sigh. She gave a quick warning. Very well then. The basket is in the back room. Fetch it yourself. Stay away from the pond while gathering pigweed. Be careful. If you cannot find much, just come home and rest. Do not wander off. With that, she hurried toward the farmland. Being late for roll call would result in docked work points. Pigweed was not easy to find on her own. Fortunately, her so-called kidnapper system offered quest assistance, much like hints in online games. A directional arrow guided her straight to patches of pigweed. Even with navigation, she tramped along dirt roads for nearly half an hour. Villagers had already stripped most pigweed close to the settlement. She had to walk further out. Pigweed could be sparse in some spots yet grow in thick clumps in others. Once she found a patch, one swing of her sickle cut a large handful. Her basket filled within 2 minutes. Ding! Congratulations on completing your daily task. You receive 1 sign in point. Current total, 1. The sun climbed higher. Fortunately it was May, not yet scorchingly hot. Zhou Yimeng trudged back toward the village carrying her basket. Her body was somewhat accustomed to the weight, yet mentally she felt ready to collapse. In her old life, her average daily WeChat step count barely hit 500. She consoled herself that this counted as cardio, another day of healthy exercise. She handed her basket over to the village woman who cared for the collective pigs. The woman greeted her warmly. That's Xiao Ying's girl. Why are you out gathering pigweed today? Usually you work in the fields with your mother. Zhou Yimeng grew awkward. Who is this woman? She could not recall this villager. She had skimmed over unimportant details when receiving memories. She nodded stiffly and said nothing. She took the pigweed token the woman handed her. The woman stared at her in puzzlement, making Zhou Yimeng even more flustered. She had never been good at social interaction. Taking her empty basket, she headed back toward the pigweed patches, slowing down more and more. After 2 round trips, noon drew near. She could push herself no further. This labor was not for her. Holding 2 wooden tokens in her hands, she went to find the village chief and handed them over, asking him to record 1 work point for her. Recently, eldest uncle had been seconded to a neighboring village to help with bridge construction. Otherwise, she would not have needed to seek out the village chief, as eldest uncle was the work point recorder. When she got home, the rest of the family had not returned yet. All she wanted was to lie down. Tossing and turning on the bed, she thought to herself that things could not go on like this. She had only carried 2 baskets today, yet she felt completely worn out, earning merely 1 work point. She was not going to keep doing this grueling labor. She wanted to study and sit for the junior high school entrance examination. She had never thought of going to school as a fortunate thing before, but today she admitted it. Compared with field work, she would choose studying. She fidgeted restlessly on the bed, half asleep, when the village's big bell rang again, signaling the end of the workday. Less than a quarter of an hour later, she heard the creak of the main gate being pushed open. The family members were back. The whole village sprang to life, filled with chatter, commotion, the clink of kitchen utensils, and the aroma of food, painting a vivid picture of everyday domestic life. "Girl, time for dinner," a hoarse female voice called from outside, accompanied by several loud knocks on the door. It was Grandma. It was only her first day in this world, and she felt utterly disoriented. She had no idea how to survive here or how to get along with the people around her, especially the relatives belonging to this body. "I know, I'll be right there," a clear young voice replied from inside the room. Zhou Yimeng closed her eyes to compose herself for 10 seconds, then swung her legs over the edge of the bed and stepped outside. What had to happen would happen. In the main hall, 3 people sat around a solid wood table. On the table were 2 plates of stir-fried green vegetables and a bowl of pickled vegetables left over from breakfast. Grandfather and grandmother sat in the seats of honor, chatting with her father. They did not stop talking when Zhou Yimeng arrived. Zhou Yimeng took the seat that the original girl had always used and picked up her rice bowl. It held sweet potato rice, not bad, some coarse grain was good for one's health. She did not know grandfather's given name. No one ever called him by it. People referred to him as Wenchang's father or Old Man Wang, as if he had long since lost his own identity. He was a tall, thin man in his 50s or 60s, standing a little under 170 centimeters. Years of labor had left his skin dark and sun-baked. His lips were pressed into a thin line, his brows perpetually furrowed, as if heavy burdens weighed upon him. He looked stern and somber, yet Zhou Yimeng knew he was easy, going at heart. He had doted on her since childhood, indulging her every wish. Within the whole family, no one spoiled Jo Yimeng more than this old man. Grandmother was known throughout the village as a sharp, witted yet difficult-tempered woman who always kept herself neat and presentable. She wore the popular Lu Hulin style, short haircut, tidy and crisp. She had a fiery temper and was not someone to provoke. Though she had mellowed a little with age, she still enjoyed gossiping about other villagers with her friends at the village entrance. Where grandmother Zhou Xiaoying went, gossip followed, and even the village chief could do little about it. One redeeming quality of Zhou Xiaoying was that she favored neither boys nor girls in general. She only favored those who shared her family surname. She doted on her youngest son outrageously, often taking things belonging to her elder two sons' households to give to him. She constantly called her youngest son, Zhou Yiming's father, the precious sole heir of the Zhou family, as though her other grandchildren from her elder sons had been adopted. The three of them were chatting about the weather, saying that the rice crops were growing well this year and that a good harvest was expected. They also talked about the yellow dog at the village entrance that kept barking non-stop, speculating that something must be agitating it and that the Li family ought to keep it under control. Here comes the soup, let's eat. Shen Tingwei carried out a large deep bowl filled with bamboo, shoot, tip egg, drop soup. There was hardly any egg in it. It was mostly bamboo, shoot tips. These had been dug in the bamboo forest in spring. Grandmother had salted and sun-dried them, storing 2 large sacks, enough to last until the following spring. Everyone finished their meal noisily. As the others prepared to head back to their rooms to rest, Zhou Yimeng spoke up. Grandpa, Grandma, I am not going out to work this afternoon. I want to go into town for a walk. Zhou Xiaoying glanced at her. You want to go out and play? It's such a long way and there is nothing going on in town today. What would you go there for? If you want to go somewhere, wait for the market day on the 15th of this month, and I will take you to the city. It will be lively then. She turned to grandfather. Old man, how many woven baskets have you finished? Make a few more these days. The weather is getting hot, so we've a couple more palm leaf fans and hair combs too. Those sell well. We can take them all to the street market later. Zhou Yimeng hurried to reply. Grandma, I want to go today. I am going to meet my classmates there. Don't worry about me. Fortunately, this body's natural behavior and personality matched her own from her previous life. Otherwise, she would not have known what to say. She had never been particularly socially adept, and she would surely give herself away if she misspoke. Very well, very well. It is good for a young girl to go out sometimes. You should not spend all your time stuck working in the fields. In my opinion, you ought not to be working in the fields at all. Your father insists that anyone who cannot study well must learn to labor, always thinking he knows best. I think you should stay home for a while and rest. You have turned as dark as a lump of coal. Zhou Wenchang was displeased and retorted at once. Mother, you spoil Mengmeng far too much. She ought to taste hardship. She could not even pass the junior high school entrance exam. The family gave her every chance to study, yet she neglected her homework and ran about playing all day. Few girls in this village get to go to school, and she wasted that opportunity. She even refused to repeat a grade. Only by working in the fields will she understand what hardship is. Grandfather frowned at those words and glared. Enough. Watch how you speak to your mother. You act as if you are some hard-working model, yet you barely earn more than a couple of work points yourself. Our Mengmeng is far better than you, such an obedient girl. How many literate people are there in this village? She finished higher primary school. In a couple of years, your elder sister can arrange a city job for her. Now be quiet. Zhou Wenchang was cut short, looking aggrieved. Shen Tingwei stifled a smile beside him. Seeing that even his wife would not side with him, he pouted at her, as though the whole family had ganged up against him. Watching this scene, Zhou Yimeng fully understood her position within the household. Just as the system had said. Life was poor and tough, yet the family dynamic felt familiar, much like what she had known in her previous life. There was hope. She set off, with the $5,000 note grandfather had given her tucked in her pocket, and hopped along the road toward the town she remembered. At first, she had barely recognized the money. It was an early generation renminbi note with a large face value, equivalent to 50 cents in modern terms. The so-called town only had 2 streets. There stood a primary school, a junior high school, a few small restaurants, a post office, a small bookstore, and the newly opened supply and marketing cooperative and other state-run institutions. Grandmother had been right. There was not much to see in town. Shuanghe village sat halfway between the town and the city. It took 1 hour to walk to town and 1.5 hours to walk to the city. Most villagers would choose to walk the extra half-hour to the city whenever they needed to buy things, for it was far more bustling. Still, Zhou Yiming had attended primary school in this town. Her real purpose for going today was to ask about the junior high school entrance examination. She wanted to find out whether she could sit the exam alongside this year's graduates or repeat a year. She was firmly determined to resume her studies. Field labor was out of the question. She would not do that kind of work anymore. Walking at a leisurely pace, she reached the primary school gate after an hour. She spoke to the gatekeeper, who recognized her, asked no extra questions, and let her pass easily. Knock, knock, knock. Zhou Yiming tapped on the office door, then rubbed the frayed, pale hem of her clothing, feeling nervous. The door opened. Teacher Zhang looked surprised to see Zhou Yiming. Come in, Zhou Yiming. What brings you here? Zhou Yiming stepped inside. Teacher Zhang had been her teacher for 3 years. In fact, there were only 5 teachers in the whole school, and every one of them had taught her. She stood before the desk, hesitated for a second over how to phrase her request, then decided to speak plainly. Teacher Zhang, I want to ask whether I can sit the graduation exam with this year's students. I have thought a great deal over this past year, and I really want to keep studying. Teacher Zhang was taken aback. He knew Zhou Yiming. She had studied in an old-style private school before the founding of the nation. She had been only 6 when she first came to the new school. Out of a class of more than 10 pupils, only 2 were girls, and Zhou Yiming was one of them. Later, unrest broke out in the region, and schooling was suspended for 2 years. When schools were reopened a few years ago, she returned to class. She had been quiet and reserved, a nice child, yet somewhat spoiled and lazy. She attended classes erratically and neglected her homework. She possessed a little natural intelligence, but did not apply herself. She had driven her teachers to frustration, yet she was always gentle, mannered, and would finish her homework even if she had to stay behind until dark. What stuck most in his memory was that her grandmother had escorted her to and from school every single day, rain or shine, from her very first day of class. Few families doted on a girl so deeply. Teacher Zhang fell silent for a moment before answering. Your foundations are weak. You failed the exam last year, and you have spent this past year at home. Your chances are slim. How about this? Repeat a grade with the next cohort when the new term begins. He was genuinely glad to see the girl want to learn again, for he had watched her grow up. Zhou Yiming thought it over. Before leaving home, she had flipped through primary school textbooks. The content was simple, far more basic than what she had studied in her previous life. Though she was no genius, she had earned a bachelor's degree in art. The textbooks used traditional Chinese characters here, yet she had practiced calligraphy from childhood thanks to her parents' various hobby classes. She also possessed extra background knowledge supplied by the system in her mind. She felt confident that she could pass the primary school to junior high school entrance exam. She knew the teacher doubted her ability, but she still wanted to give it a try. Teacher Zhang, please trust me. I have kept reading at home this past year. I regretted my old attitude long ago. I just could not see it clearly back then. Please give me a chance. There is only a little more than a month until graduation. Let me sit the exam. If I fail, I will repeat with the next grade. Zhou Yiming patted her chest earnestly. Teacher Zhang agreed. It was only an attempt. Privately, he doubted that Zhou Yiming had actually studied at home. Yet if he refused, knowing her family, her grandmother would surely storm into the school to argue with him the next day. It was not worth the trouble. He wondered why the old woman had not accompanied her today. Very well. Come to class tomorrow. Do not only show up for the exam. Bring $20,000 tomorrow to pay the tuition, and I will sort out your student status. If you pass the exam, the money will count toward this year's fees. If you fail, it will count toward next year's. Do not forget your textbooks, Teacher Zhang instructed. Tomorrow already? Zhou Yiming had not expected him to move so quickly. She had originally planned only to turn up for the final exam. Still, he had already done her a big favor, so she ought not to ask for more. She felt secretly delighted. With this arrangement, she would officially be excused from field work starting tomorrow. Wonderful. After bidding Teacher Zhang farewell, Zhou Yiming headed home in high spirits. As she walked past the rural credit cooperative in town, she suddenly remembered a new check in point. Though it was not yet part of the future Agricultural Bank of China, it already offered credit services. Why not try checking in? Perhaps she would receive some money. She could come back and check in at every location in town once she began studying here. Ding. Check-in successful. Location: Dongfeng Town Rural Credit Cooperative. Reward: 5 yuan. Zhou Yimeng saw 5 bright, red yuan banknotes printed with Tiananmen appear in her system storage bag. She did not take them out, but examined them within the interface. Each small banknote occupied 1 storage slot. Notes below read, renminbi 1, yuan times 5. Judging by the issue date, these were newly released notes for the current year. The old-style currency exchanged with the new at a ratio of 10,000 to 1, so she had received the latest banknotes. She arrived home early, at a little past 3 in the afternoon. She went straight to her room, intending to review her textbooks and wait for the rest of the family to return so she could share her big news. What? You want to go back to repeat a grade? Zhou Wenchang's disbelieving voice echoed through the main hall. His features twisted with shock. Zhou Yimeng jumped in fright. She only wanted to go back to school. At lunchtime, he had complained that she would not study. Why was he reacting like this now that she wanted to learn? Should he not be supportive? Father, it is not exactly repeating. If I pass next month, I will go straight to junior high school. Everyone else in the room looked surprised, though none reacted as violently as Zhou Wenchang. They winced slightly at his volume. Zhou Wenchang took a deep breath. I tried to persuade you last year. Do you remember what you said? You swore you would never go back to school. Now you sneak off and sign yourself up. You girl act on every passing whim. You are not allowed to go. You will work properly in the fields. I see right through you. You only want to avoid hard labor. You do not have what it takes to be a student. You will never pass that exam. Zhou Yimeng recalled the scenes from this body's past when the girl had thrown dramatic fits to avoid school. She felt a twinge of guilt. None of that had been her doing. She had only just arrived in this world. She shot a tearful, pleading look toward grandmother, as though frightened by her father. Zhou Xiaoying could not bear to see her precious granddaughter upset. She hurried over, gave her son Zhou Wenchang a sharp kick, and pulled Zhou Yimeng into her arms to comfort her. There, my good girl. Grandmother has scolded your father for you. Do not be afraid. He does not make all the decisions in this household. If you want to study, grandmother will go to the school with you tomorrow. Mother, why did you kick me? Am I wrong? She is already 14 or 15 years old and still so reckless. You spoil her rotten. Can I not speak as her father? Remember last year? She cried and carried on, saying that repeating a grade would bring shame on the family, and you all gave in to her. Now she secretly goes off to enroll. She does not truly want to study, she only wants to escape field work. You cannot indulge every one of her whims. Furious, Zhou Wenchang reached out to pull Zhou Yimeng out of grandmother's embrace. I will set you straight today. I will teach you some sense. Shen Tingwei was happy that her daughter wanted to return to school. She herself valued education and knew how important studying was. Still, she partly agreed with her husband. She knew her daughter's temperament and suspected she was only running away from farm work. A little discipline would do her good. Besides, her husband would shout but would never truly hurt the child. So she added her voice. Mother, she really is in the wrong this time. Last year she refused school completely, and now she creates this trouble. Please step back. If Wenchang does not discipline her, I will. She has to face the consequences of her choices, or she will grow utterly uncontrollable. That is enough. Old grandfather spoke, puffing on his dry tobacco pipe and exhaling smoke. The girl wanting to study is a good thing. She was young and foolish before, but now she has come to her senses. This matter is settled. The old woman will take her to school tomorrow. Wenchang, you and your wife go cook supper. You have worked all day. If you still have energy left for quarreling, go split firewood in the backyard. Zhou Wenchang fell silent at his father's command. He could not defy the old man. He sat sullenly on a small wooden stool, watching Zhou Yimeng's triumphant expression. Perfect, Zhou Yimeng thought to herself. She had known it would work out. In this family, she usually got her way no matter how much opposition there was. The system, arranged household really did resemble her original family. She hugged grandmother and spoke confidently to the whole family. Grandpa, grandmother, father, mother, rest assured. I will study hard this time. I will get into junior high, then senior high, become a college student, and work as a cadre. I will bring all of you to live comfortably in the city someday. Grandfather shook his head and chuckled softly at his granddaughter's enthusiasm. He held no real expectation that she would achieve great things through study. He and grandmother had already made plans. While they still had strength, in a few years they would ask their eldest daughter to find her a city job and a good marriage match. If she lived a safe, stable life, the old couple would be content. Early the next morning, before dawn broke, someone knocked at her bedroom door. "Girl, wake up. Get up and have breakfast. It is time for school." Zhou Yiming checked the system time. 5:30. Far too early. The night before, her parents had pulled her into their room and made her promise repeatedly that she would study hard. Her mother had lectured her at length, so she had slept poorly, her dreams filled with her parents' non-stop nagging. Still sleepy, she dragged herself out of bed. She must not be late on her first day of school. As she dressed, she glanced at her system daily quest, attend classes earnestly and finish today's homework. Just as she had guessed. The 7538 system assigned daily quests within the host's current capabilities. If she had been working in the fields, her quests would have centered on farm labor. Now that she was going to school, her tasks naturally shifted to schoolwork. Zhou Yiming followed her grandma down the road toward the town. Dawn had barely broken, dew still clung to the grass blades by the roadside, and the air carried the fresh scent of damp soil. Her grandma, Zhou Xiaoying, was old yet robust, walking at a brisk pace with her short legs moving so fast that Zhou Yiming had to trot just to keep up. "Grandma, slow down." "I can't keep up," Zhou Yiming called from behind. "It's because you don't get enough exercise. Look at you, thin as a bean sprout. I don't know what's wrong with you. The family hasn't treated you badly, yet you never put on any weight." Zhou Xiaoying glanced back at her, speaking in a disapproving tone, though she slowed her steps a little. "My good girl, when we get to the school, don't say a word. Let me do all the talking. I know Teacher Zhang well. I picked you up and dropped you off for years. He wouldn't dare turn me down." Warmth welled up inside Zhou Yiming's chest. In her past life, her grandma had been just like this. Even in her 80s, she worried every day whether she was eating properly, afraid she would starve all alone in Beijing. She wondered if her grandma, mom, and dad missed her now. But it would be fine. Once she finished her reformation, she would get to go home. Thinking of this, her eyes stung, and she quickened her pace to catch up with her grandma. She must not dwell on home, or she would lose her resolve. When they reached the town, beneath a tree outside the school gate, Zhou Xiaoying pulled a faded handkerchief from the inner pocket of her clothing. She unfolded it layer by layer, revealing a neat stack of paper bank notes. There were 500 unit notes, 1,000 unit notes, and the largest was a single 5,000 unit note. The old lady counted twice to make sure the 20,000 unit sum in small bills was correct, folded the handkerchief back up, and tucked it safely inside her clothes. She grabbed Zhou Yiming's arm. "Come on, Grandma will go pay your tuition." "Grandma, thank you." Zhou Yiming felt deeply moved. She knew the family was not well off. Her grandpa had given her 5,000 units the day before, which was already a generous gesture. Yet her family doted on her unconditionally in both of her lives. Her eyes turned slightly red. Afraid her grandma would notice, she tried to lighten the mood. "I never knew Grandma was so well off. You are so good to me." "Hey, of course. Who do you think I am? I saved bit by bit. Do you think your grandma has no money?" Zhou Xiaoying looked rather proud. "This comes from selling eggs, plus the money your grandpa earned weaving baskets, which I keep safe. Don't worry about anything else, just study hard. You are my dearest granddaughter. If I don't spoil you, who will? All my money is for you to spend." Zhou Yiming's heart grew heavy. In her previous life, she had spent her parents' money without a second thought. Now, looking at the crumpled bank notes wrapped in the handkerchief, they felt almost burning to touch. 20,000 units. In this era, that was roughly what an able-bodied adult could earn working the fields over half a month. How long must the old couple have scrimped and saved to gather the sum? Inside the school, Teacher Zhang was already waiting in the office. Seeing Zhou Yiming arrive with her grandma, a look of "just as I expected" crossed his face. "Teacher Zhang, long time no see. You look more energetic than before. Your complexion shows good fortune." As soon as she stepped through the door, Zhou Xiaoying greeted him in a loud, clear voice. "I'm counting on you to look after my granddaughter." She used to be thoughtless, but now she finally understands the value of studying. "I couldn't be happier." Teacher Zhang nodded repeatedly. He took the money, wrote out a receipt, and handed Jo Yimeng her class schedule. Math is second period today. Go sit in your classroom. The first period is self-study. Did you bring your textbooks? Jo Yimeng nodded and patted her bag holding her old, previously used books. Jo Xiaoying kept chattering to teacher Zhang for a while longer, saying things like, if she misbehaves in class, you can discipline her, and if she fails to finish homework, keep her back after school. Jo Yimeng's face burned with embarrassment, and she hurried to steer her grandma out of the office. All right, Grandma, you should head home now. Class is about to start. Very well. Study hard. Take your lunchbox. I packed you something tasty. Focus on school, do you hear me? I will. Walk carefully on your way back. Watching her grandma's stooped figure disappear past the school gate, Jo Yimeng took a deep breath and walked toward her classroom. 7 or 8 students were already inside. In these times, children generally started school later, and this school had only opened in recent years. Most of the students were teenagers of 13 or 14. A few looked even older than Jo Yimeng. They wore faded clothing, some read books, others chatted quietly. Jo Yimeng's seat was in the last row by the window, specially reserved for her by teacher Zhang. The school bell rang. A middle-aged woman with glasses walked in, math teacherly. She scanned the classroom. Her gaze lingered briefly on Jo Yimeng. She seemed to already know the situation, showed no surprise, and began her lesson straight away. Jo Yimeng opened her textbook. The 6th grade math content was not difficult for her. Fraction operations, simple equations, word problems, all material she had covered in primary school in her past life. Still, the traditional Chinese characters in this textbook took getting used to, and her eyes would sometimes skip lines as she read. She concentrated fully and took notes carefully. The morning passed quickly. Chinese class covered an essay. Jo Yimeng found it surprisingly engaging, far more vivid than the texts from textbooks in her former life. During the break, a girl with 2 braids turned around and smiled at her. Jo Yimeng, you're back. Digging through fragments of the original girl's memories, Jo Yimeng recognized her as Zhao Xiaomei, daughter of the village party secretary. Though she had been in the grade below, she was actually 1 year older, and they had gotten along reasonably well. Yes, I'm back to study. That's wonderful. There were only 3 girls in our class, now there are 4. Zhao Xiaomei lowered her voice. But why come back now? Didn't you say you were quitting last year? Are you aiming for junior high? My father says I should stop studying once this year ends. He thinks I'm old enough to work at home and start thinking about marriage. Children formed friendships simply and readily. In just one morning, Jo Yimeng had settled back into the group. She noticed that despite their hard living conditions, these kids hungered for knowledge. Even during breaks, they discussed homework problems, a sharp contrast to students from her past life who pulled out phones to watch short videos the moment class ended. Homework assignments were light in this era. Jo Yimeng tackled each assignment during break time as soon as it was given, finishing everything before school let out. Ding! Congratulations, host, for completing your daily quest. You earn 1 sign in point. Current sign in points 1. When school ended in the evening, Jo Yimeng slung her school bag over her shoulder and headed home. Passing through the town, she paused in front of the small local bookstore. It was merely a single room stocked with textbooks, comic storybooks, and a handful of newspapers. She decided to try signing in here. Ding! Sign in successful. Location: Dongfeng Town Bookstore. Reward: Junior High Chinese Knowledge. Critical bonus. Jo Yimeng's eyes lit up. This was exactly what she needed. She had been worrying about what to do after finishing primary school graduation exams. With this reward, she could get a head start on junior high material. The system noted she still needed to absorb the knowledge herself, yet it supplied virtual teachers and a dedicated study space, which made everything far easier. She walked home in high spirits. Near the village entrance, several aunties sat under trees enjoying the cool air. Why, Mei Meng? Heard you've gone back to school, a plump woman called out. Yes, I'm studying again, Jo Yimeng replied politely with a nod. What a promising girl. Study hard, don't quarrel with your family. Education can get you a government job later, another woman added. Jo Yimeng smiled without elaborating and quickened her pace. She had no wish to be cornered by these village gossips for endless questioning. Back home, a savory aroma drifted out of the courtyard. She sniffed. Could it be braised pork? That was unrealistic for this time period. Stepping inside, she saw a pot of potatoes stewed with green beans simmering on the stove. Small bits of leftover cured pork from the Lunar New Year floated in the rich, oily broth, releasing an appetizing smell. "You're home. Wash your hands and come eat." Shintingwei carried bowls out from the kitchen. "How was your first day? Could you follow the lessons?" "Yes, they're quite simple. I've learned most of this before," Zhou Yiming answered honestly. "You're just boasting." Zhou Wenchang stepped out of the house. Though his tone teased her, amusement flickered in his eyes. "If you really manage to get into junior high, I will cook for you every day." "You said that. Don't go back on your word." Zhou Yiming seized the chance. "I mean it. But if you fail, you will work in the fields obediently. No more fanciful ideas." Zhou Yiming grinned. She was not worried at all. With her existing knowledge and the system's support, the junior high entrance exam held no real threat. Still, she kept her ambitions low-key. Over dinner, Zhou Yiming mentally addressed the system. 7538, when can I use the study space? Can I enter it right now? Certainly. The sign in system includes a free study space with a time ratio of 1 to 10. It may only be used for knowledge and skill type rewards obtained from the system. While inside, your physical body will enter deep sleep mode. Would you like to activate it now? Glancing at the steaming food on the table, Zhou Yiming made her choice. Not yet. I'll go in after dinner. After eating, Zhou Yiming returned to her room, set down her school bag, and lay down on the bed. She located the newly obtained junior high Chinese knowledge in her system inventory and mentally requested entry to the virtual classroom. In the next instant, she sat inside a virtual classroom all by herself. Junior high level Chinese textbooks from this era lay on her desk. A teacher walked in without greetings and immediately began lecturing. 1 real world hour later, she woke up, her mind flooded with content from hours of Chinese lessons. 10 full hours of virtual studying had been draining. She got up to stretch her legs. Shintingwei was doing laundry in the courtyard when a new system prompt popped up. Ding! Detecting the host needs large-scale knowledge reserves for future plans. Side quest issued. Pass the Dongfeng Town Primary School graduation exam and gain admission to the city. Run junior high within 2 months. Reward, 10 sign in points, 1 special item. Zhou Yiming's hand paused. Get into the city junior high in 2 months? She stared at her palms, thought over what she had covered in class that day, and felt confident. Though she had wasted much of her former life, she still held a bachelor's degree. Catching up on 6th grade material within a single month was well within reach. Fine, I accept, she thought silently. A cheerful system chime sounded. Side quest accepted. Wish you productive studying. After helping with vegetable preparation, Zhou Yiming went back to her room. Dusk settled outside the window, and she felt a strange sense of disorientation. Only 2 days had passed since she arrived in this world, yet she was already growing accustomed to this life. Living conditions were harsh, far inferior to everything she had known before. Still, the warm feeling of being loved and cared for felt deeply familiar. She lay on her hard wooden bed and stared at the dusty wooden ceiling. Her small apartment from her past life, her soft bed, take-out meals and late-night novel reading all felt like distant memories. The system was right. Continuing down that old path would have left her unmotivated and adrift. Even so, she had once thought there was nothing wrong with living a quiet, ordinary life. Every society needed ordinary people. I will get home, she told herself firmly. What is wrong with wanting an easy life? If the system wanted her to reform, she would do it well and make the best of things even in this era. 7538, Zhou Yiming whispered in her mind. Are you there? There was a short pause before the familiar brisk electronic voice replied, sounding slightly gentler than usual. Host, I am here. 7538 will always stay with you. Zhou Yiming closed her eyes, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Tomorrow would be another day, and she had to get up early for school. Outside the window, the soft May night breeze blew. Zhou Yiming had another dream. She was back inside her small apartment in Beijing, lying in bed scrolling on her phone, dirty clothes strewn carelessly across the floor. Her mother called via video chat to ask if she had eaten. Her father and grandma leaned close to the screen, showering her with concern. She mumbled vague answers, saying she had eaten and was doing fine so they would not worry. She hung up and kept reading novels late into the night, losing herself in fictional worlds to pretend everything was fine. In the dream, panic washed over her. Something precious was slipping away, yet she could not grasp hold of it. A deep sadness overwhelmed her. Then she woke. Dawn had not fully broken. Pale blue, gray light filtered through the paper window panes. Zhou Yiming rolled over. The wooden bed creaked, its hard surface digging uncomfortably into her shoulders. She stared at the dusty ceiling for a while, sighed, ran her hands through her messy hair, and dragged herself out of bed. Today was her second full day of classes. After washing up and finishing breakfast, she slung her school bag over her shoulder and set off toward town. Her grandma had wanted to walk her there again, but Zhou Yimeng convinced her not to, arguing that being escorted to school at her age would draw teasing. The elderly woman stood at the gate looking reluctant, giving her repeated reminders to take good care of herself, as if Zhou Yimeng were setting off on a long journey far away. The early May air was already turning warm. By the time she walked the hour-long route to school, a thin layer of sweat covered her forehead. It was tough, really tough. She kept encouraging herself. Once the exams were over, things would get better. Quite a few students had already arrived in the classroom. As soon as Zhou Yimeng sat down in her seat, she sensed several pairs of eyes turning toward her. Looking up, she noticed several boys in the front rows huddled together, whispering and glancing her way every so often. She ignored them and pulled out her textbook to preview the upcoming lesson. "Well, if it isn't Zhou Yimeng," a cocky voice sounded nearby. Zhou Yimeng lifted her head. A boy half a head taller than her leaned casually against a nearby desk, arms folded across his chest, a mocking smirk on his face. She recognized him from the original girl's memories, Lu Jiangwo. He was 3 years older than her. They had once been classmates. His grades had been better than the original Zhou Yimeng's, yet he had failed the junior high entrance exam the previous year and was repeating 6th grade. His family was comparatively well off and could afford another year of schooling. He must have been absent yesterday. 2 boys hung behind him, one tall and thin, the other short and stocky. Together they looked just like trouble, making teens hanging around town. "Heard you came back to school. What happened? You acted so tough last year when you quit. Why are you slinking back now?" Lu Jiangwo spoke loud enough for several classmates to turn and watch. Zhou Yimeng looked at him calmly. She thought to herself, so this sort of scene really does happen in real life. Part of her wondered how she ought to respond. Should she snap back? Trapped inside the mind of someone nearly 30, being taunted by a teenage boy felt almost ridiculous. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue." Seeing her stay silent, Lu Jiangwo grew more provocative. "I'm telling you, there's no point trying. You did badly last year. What makes you think you will pass now? You're just daydreaming. I only missed passing by 2 points last year. How many points short were you? 20? 30? The stocky boy beside him joined in. "Don't be so harsh, Jiangwo. She's a girl, she might start crying." The tall, thin boy laughed. "Right, and then her grandma might storm into the school again. None of us want that." Zhou Yimeng calmly flipped her textbook open to today's lesson, then raised her eyes toward Lu Jiangwo, her tone completely flat. "Oh." Lu Jiangwo was caught off guard. He had expected her either to argue or shed tears. Her single indifferent word made all his taunts land uselessly. He had remembered Zhou Yimeng as sharp-tongued. Truth be told, he had felt a flicker of excitement seeing her return. Not many students repeated the grade. They were old classmates. Their parting the year before had been awkward, when she had said she would never end up stuck repeating grades like him. Seeing her back at school had tempted him to tease her. I haven't finished talking." Lu Jiangwo flushed with irritation. "Zhou Yimeng, mark my words. If someone as lazy and inconsistent as you gets into junior high, I will write my name backwards." Zhou Yimeng nodded. "All right. Start thinking about your new name then." Several nearby students could not hold back their laughter. Lu Jiangwo's face burned bright red. He was about to retort when the school bell rang. Math teacher Li walked in holding lesson materials. Lu Jiangwo had no choice but to trudge back to his seat, glaring fiercely at Zhou Yimeng over his shoulder as he went. Zhou Yimeng smiled faintly, paying no mind to his empty threat. At nearly 30 years old, she would hardly let silly remarks from a teenage boy upset her. The morning classes passed uneventfully. Math covered fraction word problems, which Zhou Yimeng mastered immediately, finishing exercises rapidly. Chinese class studied an ancient poem. When the teacher had the students read aloud, Zhou Yimeng joined in and enjoyed its rhythmic verses. During the break, Zhao Xiaomei leaned over again and lowered her voice. Zhou Yiming, stay away from Lu Jiangwo. He had a foul mouth last semester and was always picking on people. Relying on being a local from town, he acted high-handed in class. Last semester, he made one girl cry several times. She told teacher Zhang, and then his father beat him badly. He wailed so loudly in the teacher's office it was ear-splitting. It was so embarrassing. Now he's picking on you. You should report him to the teacher too, so his dad can give him another beating. It's fine. I won't bother with him. Zhou Yimeng smiled. By the way, Xiaomei, have you finished your math homework? I want to see how you worked out that final word problem. Zhao Xiaomei froze for a moment, then scratched her head sheepishly. Well, I didn't really get it either. I was just about to ask someone. Zhou Yimeng glanced at her exercise book. Zhao Xiaomei's steps were messy, yet her general train of thought was correct. She had gotten stuck when converting fractions to a common denominator. Picking up a pen, Zhou Yimeng demonstrated step by step on scratch paper. See? You don't have to rush into finding a common denominator. Work out what's inside the brackets first. At first Zhao Xiaomei looked confused, but her eyes lit up as she followed along. Oh, that's how it works. No wonder I kept getting the wrong answer. I misread the signs. Right. That's where most people slip up, Zhou Yimeng nodded. Zhao Xiaomei leaned closer and looked curiously at Zhou Yimeng. Memeng, you feel like a totally different person since you came back. I heard you barely used to finish homework, but now you're helping me solve problems. Zhou Yimeng's heart skipped a beat, though her expression stayed calm. I've thought a lot this past year at home. If I don't study hard, I'll end up working the fields. I don't want to spend my whole life carrying pig fodder. Zhao Xiaomei nodded in complete agreement. That's true. I don't want farm work either. But Dad says girls don't need much schooling. We'll marry into other families sooner or later. My little brother is in 2nd grade this year. Dad will definitely pay for him, but not for me. He says we can't afford 2 kids in school. Zhou Yimeng opened her mouth to say something, yet in the end she only patted Zhao Xiaomei on the shoulder. If you do well in exams, maybe your dad will change his mind. Zhao Xiaomei gave a bitter smile and said nothing more. When school let out at noon, Zhou Yimeng took the lunchbox her grandmother had packed and sat down under a shade tree to eat. Inside were coarse, grain rice, stir-fried pickled vegetables, and 1 boiled egg. She stared at the egg in surprise. Home. Raised eggs were normally saved to sell for money and rarely eaten at home. Grandmother had boiled one especially for her. She peeled it slowly and ate it bite by bite, tangled feelings welling inside her. Eating alone? Zhou Yimeng looked up. A thin, bespectacled girl stood before her, also holding a lunchbox. She recalled this was Lin Shuhua, the class monitor for academics, who consistently ranked among the top 3 students. Yes, Zhou Yimeng nodded. Lin Shuhua sat down on the stone step beside her and opened her box. It held white rice and a small plate of greens, better food than Zhou Yimeng's. Teacher Zhang told me you've come back to repeat a grade so you can get into junior high. That's right. You have to push yourself. The graduation exam is only 2 months away. Lin Shuhua pushed up her glasses and spoke earnestly. Only 3 students from our class passed last year. 1 went to number 3 City Middle School and 2 to Dongfeng Middle School in town. They say this year's test will be harder and more students are applying. Zhou Yimeng bit into her egg. I know. I'll work hard. Lin Shuhua glanced at her, seemed about to say something but held back. She took a few mouthfuls of rice, then asked, Did you have trouble with Lu Jiangwo before? Not really. We were in the same class, but he wasn't like this back then. Those old events had never registered in Zhou Yimeng's memory. They had seemed trivial even when she first learned of them. I see. Don't take it to heart. His family is well off, and his father is an official in town. So he's grown used to throwing his weight around at school. Lin Shuhua stood up. I'm finished. I'll head back. Feel free to ask me if you run into difficult problems. Thank you. Zhou Yimeng smiled at her. After the first afternoon class, Teacher Zhang walked in carrying a stack of exam papers. Students, the graduation exam is next month. Today we will take a practice test to see where everyone stands. You will complete Chinese and mathematics within 2 hours and hand your papers in when finished. A collective groan rose from the classroom. Zhou Yimeng took the paper passed forward and skimmed through it, relieved. The questions were not difficult at all, far simpler than the Olympiad-level problems she had encountered in her previous life. Most tested basic knowledge points. She picked up her pen and began writing. She did not rush, working carefully to avoid careless mistakes, moving through each question one by one. Halfway through the test, out of the corner of her eye, she spotted Lu Jiangwo slouching in the seat diagonally ahead. He scratched his head, sweating profusely over a problem. Zhou Yimeng looked away and kept working on her own paper. She had no time to worry about whether others understood the material. After all, exam scores belonged to oneself. 2 hours passed quickly. Zhou Yimeng double-checked her paper for obvious errors and handed it in. Teacher Zhang collected papers and gave her a wordless, surprised look. He had watched during the exam and seen that every section was filled out. It appeared she really had studied on her own at home, just as she had claimed. When school ended, Zhou Yimeng packed her school bag and walked out of the classroom. Right after stepping through the doorway, she heard Lu Jiangwo's voice behind her. Wow, you finished fast. Could it be you couldn't answer anything and just gave up? Zhou Yimeng stopped and turned around. Lu Jiangwo stood in the doorway with hands planted on his hips, striking a pose like a quarreling village woman. Behind him were his 2 sidekicks, staring at her defiantly. She almost laughed. In her former life, she would have snapped back in irritation. Now, looking at his young, insolent face, he struck her as utterly childish. Lu Jiangwo, Zhou Yimeng said evenly. Don't assume everyone is like you. Just because you cannot solve the questions doesn't mean nobody else can. You'd better worry about your own work. I saw you left the second major problem completely blank. Lu Jiangwo's face turned rigid. She had hit the mark. His 2 followers stared, exchanging glances yet daring not to speak. Without waiting for his reply, Zhou Yimeng turned and left. She heard Lu Jiangwo shout in frustrated anger, "Zhou Yimeng, just you wait." She did not look back and waved one hand. "Sure, I'll be waiting." Her mood was bright on the walk home. She felt confident about the practice test. Most basic questions should be correct, and she had solved all the word problems. Elementary school mathematics felt straightforward. At this pace, she ought to pass the graduation exam 2 months later without much trouble. Near the school gate, a crowd of students gathered around a red notice posted on the wall. Drawing closer, she read the enrollment announcement for City No. 1 Middle School. This year they would open one special junior, high class for students across the whole city. Spots were limited, and admission would be based on competitive examination. The test was scheduled for the morning of Sunday, July 5th. Zhou Yimeng stood studying the red paper for a long time. A thought popped into her mind. Taking the local junior, high entrance exam was one option, but why not try for the better City No. 1 Middle School? The 2 exam dates did not conflict. If she failed No. 1 Middle School, there were still No. 2, No. 3, and No. For middle schools in the city, she would surely get into one through the unified examination. It surprised her that independent enrollment already existed in this era. She memorized the registration time and address, then continued toward home. It was not yet dark when she arrived. In the courtyard, Shen Tingwei was hanging laundry to dry. Seeing her come back, she called out, "How was school today? Are you tired from studying?" "It went fine. We had a practice test, and I thought I did pretty well." Zhou Yimeng set down her school bag and helped Shen Tingwei take down the laundry. Shen Tingwei looked pleased. "That's wonderful. Your grandmother was asking about you this afternoon. She wondered whether you had enough for lunch and if you ate your egg." "I ate it. Grandma is so good to me." "Of course she is. She raised you." Shen Tingwei handed her folded clothes. "Take these inside. I'll call you when dinner is ready." Zhou Yimeng carried the clothes toward her room. Passing the kitchen, she smelled a rich aroma. Peering inside, she saw a pot simmering on the stove with bone chunks and turnips. There was not much fat, yet the scent of bone broth made her swallow hard. "Are we having bone soup today?" she asked happily. "Your grandfather sold woven baskets in town today and bought a marrow bone. He said it's to nourish your brain for studying." Shen Tingyue's voice drifted over from the courtyard. "Exams take a lot out of you. You need good food." Zhou Yimeng stood in the kitchen doorway holding her clothes, watching the flames flicker in the stove. The fragrance filled the air. In her past life living alone in Beijing, she rarely cooked for herself for months at a time, ordering takeout whenever she grew hungry. Back then she had thought she was free and living exactly as she wished. Looking back, those days felt empty. She had pretended everything was fine in front of her parents, yet the system's arrival had proven they had known the truth all along. She sniffed, carried the clothes inside, then returned to the courtyard to help Shen Tingwei sort vegetables. Bending over leafy greens, another thought crossed her mind. Life here might not be so bad after all. It was like being granted a second chance. Ding! The system suddenly sent a notification. Zhou Yimeng jumped in surprise and asked mentally, "What is it?" Detected host's positive mindset. Notification. Side quest confirmed. Pass the Dongfeng Town Primary School graduation examination and gain admission to a city junior high school within 2 months. Host's current learning progress is satisfactory. Keep up the good work. Zhou Yiming rolled her eyes inwardly. Could you please notify me when I'm not busy? Working is annoying enough. Try to read the room next time. The system replied in a cheerful tone. 7538 is always monitoring your growth. Keep going, host. Ignoring it, Zhou Yiming kept sorting vegetables. Still, she began making plans. She had memorized City Number 1 Middle School's enrollment notice. Later she would get a stamp from school, bring her household, registration booklet and village certificate to sign up. If she got in, it would be a huge win. If not, nothing would be lost. The town-run junior high would serve as her fallback. She could simply forfeit the system reward. At dinner time, the whole family sat around the table. Zhou Wenchang, surprisingly, did not tease her. He even picked up a piece of bone and placed it in her bowl. Eat more. You're as thin as a monkey. Zhou Yimeng was caught off guard and retorted, Dad, are you feeling strange today? You silly girl. Zhou Wenchang raised his hand as if to swat her, only for Zhou Xiaoying to slap his arm away. Amid laughter and banter, they finished dinner. Outside the window, night had fully fallen. The village lay quiet, only crickets chirping non-stop. Lying in bed, Zhou Yiming reflected on everything that had happened during the day. She wondered how difficult City Number 1 Middle School's exam would be. In past years, the city high school only accepted students from urban and nearby townships and villages. Counties operated their own high schools. This time they were recruiting one class across 5 counties and 2 districts, clearly selecting top students. The test would surely be challenging. She would have to study hard in the days ahead. She closed her eyes, the corners of her mouth lifting gently. Tomorrow would be another new day. Zhou Yiming's practice. Test scores came out the next morning. During the second period morning break, Teacher Zhang walked into the classroom carrying the stack of graded papers, his expression unreadable. He set them on the lectern and cleared his throat. Students, results from our recent practice test are ready. I will call out names and scores. Come collect your paper when your name is read. Silence fell over the room. Everyone pricked up their ears. Lin Shuhua, 97 for Chinese, 92 for mathematics. Total 179. Soft murmurs of admiration spread. Lin Shuhua walked calmly forward, took her paper, and returned to her seat. Zhao Xiaomei, 81 for Chinese, 78 for mathematics. Total 159. Relieved, Zhao Xiaomei trotted up to collect hers and gestured, not bad, toward Zhou Yimeng. Teacher Zhang kept reading out scores. Occasional sighs or quiet laughs echoed. Lu Jianghuo's results were predictable. 69 in Chinese, 67 in mathematics, total 136. He had slipped noticeably from his previous exam. His face turned pitch black as he fetched his paper. He snorted loudly when he walked past Zhou Yiming's desk. Zhou Yiming paid him no mind and waited quietly for her own name. Zhou Yimeng. Teacher Zhang paused, glanced down at the paper as if double-checking, then raised his voice. Chinese 94, mathematics 100. Total 194. Top of the class. One heartbeat of silence passed, then the classroom erupted in commotion. 194 points? That can't be right. Didn't she fail junior high entrance exams last year? First in class? Her score is even higher than Lin Shuhua's. She's repeating a grade. She learned all this material once before. Isn't it natural she'd do better? But Lu Jianghuo repeated too. Lin Shuhua twisted around to look at Zhou Yimeng, clear surprise visible behind her glasses, which quickly gave way to thoughtful contemplation. Zhou Yimeng stood calmly, walked to the lectern, and received her paper. As he handed it over, Teacher Zhang whispered, "Excellent. Tremendous progress. Keep it up." "Thank you, Teacher Zhang." She nodded and went back to her seat. The moment she sat down, Zhao Xiaomei spun around, eyes sparkling. "Zhou Yiming. That's incredible. 194 points. What on earth have you been studying at home this past year?" "Just read some books," Zhou Yiming replied casually. Her answer was hardly convincing. For the rest of the morning, she felt eyes drifting toward her now and then, curious, astonished, and some unfriendly ones. Especially Lu Jianghuo's grim, furious stare. Zhou Yiming paid them no attention. She reviewed her paper. Out of the 6 points lost in Chinese, 4 were deducted for messy handwriting in her composition, and 2 came from an incomplete reading comprehension answer. She knew exactly where her weaknesses lay. She would target those areas for improvement. At noon lunchtime, Zhao Xiaomei brought her lunchbox over, with Lin Xihua following close behind. The three sat under the shade tree. Zhao Xiaomei chattered non-stop. Mei Ming, you should have seen Lu Jianghuo's face after he got his paper. He always bragged he missed passing by merely 2 points last year, but look how far behind you he is. It's hilarious. Zhou Yiming bit into the sweet potato her grandmother had packed and mumbled a reply. Lin Xihua ate quietly for a while before speaking. Zhou Yiming, what method did you use for the final math problem? I set up an equation and worked through 2 steps, yet you got the answer in just 2 lines on your paper. Zhou Yiming thought back. Oh, I used the ratio method. The problem gave proportional conditions, so calculating through ratios is faster than equations. She felt slightly embarrassed. As an adult with complete modern education, competing against elementary school children felt like fighting with an unfair advantage. She touched her cheek self-consciously. Lin Xihua nodded thoughtfully and adjusted her glasses. I see. I will look into that approach. Zhao Xiaomei glanced back and forth between them and sighed. You two are so brilliant. I would be thrilled if I could hit 170. Your foundation is solid. You just make careless calculation errors, Zhou Yimeng told her. Go over every calculation twice after finishing homework, and your scores will improve a great deal. Zhao Xiaomei nodded firmly. Got it. From now on I will check my answers 3 times. They finished their lunch chatting. Zhou Yimeng noticed Lin Xihua spoke little, yet every comment was sharp and relevant. She was bright and diligent. Zhou Yimeng thought she would make a good friend. The afternoon classes were history and natural science. Though Zhou Yimeng had covered similar topics in her previous life, textbooks had gone through countless revisions. So she listened attentively and took notes. The history teacher lectured on modern history, from the Opium War to the 1911 Revolution. The textbooks were simple yet substantial. The teacher, who might have lived through those events himself, added many personal observations far richer than the condensed exam, focused study guides from her former world. Before dismissal, Teacher Zhang made another announcement. The city-wide Unified Junior High Entrance Examination will take place on July 10th. Anyone wishing to sit for it must register with me before next Monday and fill out the application form. In addition, City No. 1 Middle School is opening one special admission class under the new policy. Its exam is on July 5th. Those who want to try may sign up independently. Registration closes 1 week before the test. Come to my office for a school stamp if you plan to sit it. Whispers rippled through the classroom. Zhou Yimeng overheard 2 boys sitting in front of her talking. I have a relative who teaches at No. 1 Middle School. He said only 40 students will be admitted to that class. Thousands will apply across 5 counties and 2 districts. Only top talents get in. No way for me then. I can barely hope to pass the town-level exam. Zhou Yimeng said nothing but stored this information away. The exam was on the 5th, less than 2 months away. She had to study hard. In the days that followed, Zhou Yimeng threw herself into intense studying, like a clockwork toy wound tight. She got up at 5 every morning. For half an hour, she memorized classical Chinese poems and texts. After breakfast, she walked to school, reciting formulas and knowledge points along the road. She had to drill herself because she kept catching herself wanting to apply formulas beyond the scope of elementary school curriculum. During the day, she focused intently in class, filling her notebooks with dense notes. Even after class, she never idled. She either worked on exercises or discussed problems with Zhao Xiaomei and Lin Xihua. She found the system-powered study space most helpful. Every evening after dinner, she would finish washing up early, lie down in bed, and enter the system space to study for 1 real world hour. Within the space, 10 hours were available for her to go through junior high level Chinese knowledge. Though the system-generated tutors wore blank expressions, they explained content clearly and thoroughly, even more meticulously than the teachers at her school. She had already finished all the 7th grade textbooks and was now working through 8th grade material. These lessons benefited her greatly. Having grown accustomed to simplified Chinese characters in her past life, she relied heavily on these Chinese classes to correct her writing. Still, studying for 10 straight hours in the space was exhausting. Each time she exited it, her mind felt crammed full of information. Yet the effects were immediate. Her mastery of classical Chinese improved by leaps and bounds. A week later, the class sat for another mock exam. This time Zhou Yimeng scored 195 points, remaining top of the class, 2 points ahead of Lin Shuhua. There was barely a stir in the classroom. Everyone seemed to have accepted that Zhou Yimeng had suddenly become an outstanding student. Lu Jiangwo, on the other hand, had apparently performed poorly again. After school, he walked past her with a dark scowl and, for once, did not pick on her. Zhao Xiaomei whispered to Zhou Yimeng, "I heard Lu Jiangwo's dad flew into a rage when he saw his grades. He said if Lu Jiangwo still fails to get into junior high, he will send him to work as an apprentice in a factory and stop his schooling. How nice it is that he can get a factory job if he flunks." Zhou Yimeng felt indifferent. She did not exactly dislike Lu Jiangwo. To her, he was just an immature boy. Educational opportunities were precious in this era. His family was well off enough to let him repeat a year, yet he failed to value it. In the end, it was his own choice. Besides, he had his family to fall back on, making him far luckier than most people. Soon it was late June, only 10 odd days away from the entrance examination for No. 1 City Middle School. This past month had been fulfilling for Zhou Yimeng, and she had gradually grown used to living in this time period. Her daily system tasks were not difficult for the most part, generally consisting of studying, reading texts, reciting passages, and finishing homework. After school that day, instead of heading straight home, Zhou Yimeng went to the teacher's office. Teacher Zhang was grading assignments and looked surprised when he saw her come in. "Is there something you need?" Zhou Yimeng stood before his desk and organized her thoughts. "Teacher Zhang, I want to sign up for the admission exam held by No. 1 City Middle School." Teacher Zhang's pen paused. He lifted his head and looked at her with a complicated expression. "You want to sit for No. 1 City Middle School's exam?" "Yes." Teacher Zhang fell silent for a few seconds. He set down his pen, leaned back in his chair, and spoke earnestly. "Zhou Yimeng, do you know what caliber of students that special admission class recruits? Across 5 counties and 2 districts of the whole city, only 40 students are selected from thousands of primary school graduates. Those who get in are almost always top students from their respective schools, many of whom skipped grades." Zhou Yimeng nodded. "I know. I have seen your progress. Honestly, your transformation this term has taken me by surprise." Teacher Zhang paused. "At your current level, you will have no trouble getting into the town-run junior high school. The admission score line for Dongfeng Middle School is usually around 150 points, and you score more than 40 points above it. You even stand a reasonable chance for the regular entrance exam to No. 1 City Middle School. But that special admission test for No. 1 City Middle School is far harder than the regular exam. It tests advanced content, and the competition is fierce." He sighed. "I am not trying to discourage you. I just worry that if you pour energy into preparing for it yet fail to pass, it might hurt your performance in the regular entrance exam. You could end up with nothing to show for all your efforts, and that would be a real pity." Zhou Yimeng listened quietly until he finished speaking, then looked straight at Teacher Zhang with sincere eyes. "Teacher Zhang, I know you have my best interests at heart. I understand how difficult No. 1 City Middle School is to get into, but I still want to give it a try. Over this past year at home, I have thought a great deal. I believe that when an opportunity presents itself, one should not give up simply out of fear of failure. Even if I do not pass, I can still take the regular exam for other junior high schools. The timelines do not conflict." She paused, her voice soft yet resolute. "I just do not want to regret it later." Teacher Zhang stared at her for a long moment without speaking. The sunset streamed through the window, stretching Zhou Yimeng's shadow across the floor. The thin young girl standing there had clear, earnest eyes, a far cry from the inconsistent, half-hearted child he remembered. It struck him that he might have underestimated her. This girl truly wanted to learn. After a moment's silence, Teacher Zhang nodded. "Very well. If you are set on taking it, I will write you a recommendation letter. Still, keep a level head and do not put too much pressure on yourself. Getting in would be wonderful, yet other junior high schools are perfectly good options if you do not make it." "Thank you, Teacher Zhang." Zhou Yimeng's eyes lit up, and a smile spread across her face. "Go home and prepare well. The exam is next Sunday, less than a week away." Teacher Zhang waved his hand and added, "Come ask me whenever you run into difficult problems." Zhou Yimeng nodded vigorously and turned to leave the office. Stepping outside the school gate, the warm late June breeze brushed her cheeks, carrying the scent of wildflowers growing along the field ridges. Zhou Yiming took a deep breath. These past few weeks in this new world had changed her considerably. She had never worked this hard in her former life. She wanted to sit for the exam mainly to test herself. After putting in so much effort, she longed to see where she ranked among students across the whole city. She also had a plan. She hoped to skip grades in junior high. She was 14 years old now. 3 years of junior high plus 3 years of senior high would take 6 years, which would bring her to 1961 upon graduation. If she went on to university, she would lose too much time. A sense of urgency haunted her, something she had never felt in her past life, where she would often give up early and cut her losses. This was not for system rewards, nor to prove anything to others. Deep down, even though she liked taking things easy, she understood that an educated person who preferred an easy life lived a completely different existence from someone who labored in the fields or tightened screws in a factory. She enjoyed comfort, yet she knew that comfort required solid foundations. In her previous life, her parents had provided that safety net. In this life, she could only rely on herself. If she endured hardship now, she could live a better life later. On her way home, she walked faster than usual, already mapping out her review schedule for the coming days. For mathematics, she would focus on applied word problems and geometry. For Chinese, she would go over classical texts from junior high textbooks once more. For natural science and history, she would reorganize key knowledge points and so forth. Ding! The system suddenly sent a prompt. System reminder. The admission test for no. One city middle school covers all primary school subjects plus partial junior high foundational knowledge. Host is advised to strengthen weak subjects in a targeted manner. 7538 is at your service. The corners of Zhou Yiming's mouth lifted. She replied inwardly, got it. This system really did like popping up every so often just to make its presence known. When Zhou Yiming arrived home, dusk had not fully fallen. From the courtyard came the steady thud of Zhou Wenchang chopping firewood. She pushed open the gate and saw her father swinging an axe bare, chested, glistening beads of sweat covering his back in the sunset light. Strangely, despite working out in the fields every day, he never tanned. She envied his fair complexion. Back home, Zhou Wenchang did not look up as he kept chopping. Why are you late today? I went to the teacher's office to see Teacher Zhang. Zhou Yiming set down her school bag and knelt by the well to wash her hands. Dad, I have something to tell everyone. Zhou Wenchang paused and glanced over at her. What is it? I will wait until Grandma, Grandpa, and Mum get back so we can talk together. Zhou Yiming shook the water off her hands and walked inside the house. At dinner time, the whole family sat around the table. They enjoyed a nice meal that night. Zhou Xiaoying had stewed cabbage and tofu with a handful of vermicelli, steaming hot. Zhou Yiming took a couple of mouthfuls of rice, set down her chopsticks, and cleared her throat. I have something to say. Everyone looked up at her. Zhou Wenchang wore a wary look. What mischief are you up to now? It is not mischief. Zhou Yiming shot him an annoyed glance. It is good news. Teacher Zhang told me that No. 1 City Middle School is running a special admission class this year. The exam will be next Sunday. I want to take it. A short hush fell over the dinner table. Zhou Xiaoying reacted first. No. 1 City Middle School? The top middle school in our Jia city. Yes, the best middle school in the whole city. That is wonderful news. Zhou Xiaoying's face lit up. Our granddaughter is going to sit the exam for the city's finest school. Zhou Wenchang frowned and set down his chopsticks. No. 1 City Middle School in town? I have heard that school is incredibly hard to get into. Only a little over 100 students are admitted each year. Can you really pass? This special admission round must be even more competitive. How will I know if I do not try? Zhou Yiming said. I ranked first in our class in the last mock exam. Teacher Zhang says I will get into the town-run junior high for sure. I also stand a shot at the regular entrance exam for No. 1 City Middle School. The special admission test is difficult, but I want to give it a go. Shin Tingwei listened quietly and spoke up at that moment. If you want to take it, Mum supports you. But what about registration? The exam is next Sunday. You need to sign up ahead of time, right? Teacher Zhang wrote me a recommendation letter, yet I still need to go register in person. The exam will be held in the city, so someone has to take me there. Zhou Yiming turned toward Zhou Wenchang. Dad, can you take me? Zhou Wenchang stayed silent, his brows knitted as he thought things over. Zhou Xiaoying grew anxious and slapped him on the back. Say something. Your daughter is asking you to take her to the exam. Have you lost your voice? I never said I would not go. Zhou Wenchang jolted at the slap. I was just thinking. The city is far away. The trip takes more than 3 hours each way. Trying to go and return on the same day would be far too rushed. Maybe we should head there one day early and stay overnight in the city. Staying overnight will cost money, Shin Tingwei remarked. Some expenses are necessary. We cannot have our daughter rushing around in the dark. For once, Zhou Wenchang spoke firmly. Besides, I have heard number 1 city middle school is in the eastern district. It takes more than 2 hours to get there from town. The exam starts early in the morning. We would never make it if we set off the same day. Zhou Yiming's eyes brightened. Dad, so you agree? When did I say I disagreed? Zhou Wenchang glared at her. I was furious last year when you refused to study. Now that you are eager to learn and aim for a good school, you are my only daughter. How could I stand in your way? Zhou Xiaoying smiled and cut in. That is right. Our girl has ambition. As her father, you ought to support her. Wenchang, go to town tomorrow and finish her registration. Do not let it slip. All right, all right. Zhou Wenchang took a mouthful of rice and glanced over at Zhou Yiming again. But let me make one thing clear. Do not go crying if you fail. I will not cry, Zhou Yiming pouted. If I do not get in, I will attend the town-run junior high. I will still have a place to study one way or another. Grandpa, who had barely spoken so far, took a puff from his dry tobacco pipe and said slowly, Girl, how much does it cost to sit for this exam at number 1 city middle school? The registration fee should not be high. Teacher Zhang said it is only a few hundred yuan. I will just need to bring some dry food and water for exam day. Grandpa nodded and turned to Zhou Xiaoying. Wife, get some money for the girl tomorrow so her father can take it for registration. I think we still have some cloth coupons at home. Dig them out and buy a length of fabric to make her a new blouse. She should look neat and presentable on exam day. Very well. I will head to the supply and marketing cooperative tomorrow, Zhou Xiaoying readily agreed. A lump formed in Zhou Yiming's throat. Back in her past life, her family had cared for her in exactly the same way ahead of her college entrance exam. Her mother had planned meals for weeks in advance. Her father took time off work to accompany her, and her grandmother secretly slipped a chocolate bar into her school bag. These small, trivial acts of kindness appeared across different eras, expressed by loving family members. That night, as Zhou Yiming lay in bed, her thoughts kept returning to the upcoming exam. The date shown on her system panel was June 23rd, exactly 12 days before the number 1 city middle school special admission exam. 7538, she called inwardly. Do you know the exact content covered in the number 1 city middle school exam? The system replied instantly. Based on data retrieved by 7538, the special admission test for number 1 city middle school includes 2 subjects, Chinese and mathematics. Each subject is scored out of 100 points. 70% of exam content draws from all 6 years of primary school curriculum. 30% covers foundational 7th grade knowledge. There is no interview segment. 30% junior, high content? Zhou Yiming mentally calculated. She had already worked through most of 7th grade Chinese and mathematics inside the system space, which should give her an advantage. Even so, the full 6-year primary school curriculum covered a wide scope. She could lose points if unfamiliar niche topics came up. System, can you compile a summary of all primary school knowledge points for me? I want to check what I might have missed. Affirmative. Would hosts like to view it now? Yes, now. Instantly, a detailed knowledge checklist appeared on the system panel. Zhou Yiming read through item after item. Chinese covered phonetics, character recognition, and basic classical text knowledge. Mathematics spanned integer operations to introductory geometry. Natural science included plant and animal classification and simple physical principles. History listed major events from ancient to modern era timelines, pages upon pages of densely packed content. She mentally ticked off points as she read. She already mastered most of them, though a few details remained shaky. Solar, term agricultural proverbs in natural science, and specific clauses of modern era treaties in history. Got it. I will focus on filling in those gaps over the next few days. Host, keep up the hard work. 7538 believes in you. Zhou Yiming rolled over, about to close the panel and sleep, when another thought struck her. By the way, system, if I get into number 1 city middle school, will the side quest, gain admission to a city-based junior high school, be marked complete? That is correct, host. The quest will be finished whether you are admitted via the special admission test or the regular entrance exam to any junior high school within the city. What about the reward? What is the special item? That information cannot be disclosed for now. Please focus on the exam first. Zhou Yiming pouted inwardly. So secretive. She did not press further. She would find out upon passing. Asking changed nothing if she failed. Closing her eyes, she mentally reviewed the day's study material and drifted off to sleep. Early the next morning, Zhou Wenchang took Zhou Yiming to town for registration. The registration office was located within the town education bureau. A queue of more than a dozen people waited, all parents accompanying their children. Zhou Yiming scanned the crowd but spotted none of her classmates. Most were probably waiting to see how things unfolded. When their turn arrived, the clerk checked her recommendation letter and household registration booklet. He glanced up at Zhou Yiming. You are Zhou Yiming? Teacher Zhang came by earlier to speak highly of your great progress. Zhou Yiming nodded. Yes, that is me. Very well. The registration fee is 500 yuan. Here is your admission ticket. Bring it with you on exam day. The clerk handed over a paper stamped with an official red seal, printed with exam time, venue, and important notes. Zhou Yiming read it carefully. Exam time, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., July 5th. The two subjects would be held back with no break-in between. Venue, old campus of number 1 City Middle School, Wudong Street, Eastern District. Reminders, bring your own writing tools and arrive half an hour early. She carefully tucked the admission ticket inside a textbook, placing it deep inside her school bag to avoid creasing it. Zhou Wenchang finished paying, leaned over for a look, and said, "Keep it safe. Do not lose it." "I will." Stepping out of the office, Zhou Wenchang patted her head. "Let us go to the supply and marketing cooperative to buy fabric. Grandma wants to make you new clothes." Zhou Yiming blinked in surprise. "Really? My current clothes still fit fine." "When Grandma says so, nobody dares argue." Zhou Wenchang cracked a rare joke. "Come on, do not dawdle." The supply and marketing cooperative was crowded. Zhou Wenchang pushed through to the fabric counter and browsed for a long time. Before picking a length of indigo, blue cotton cloth. It was inexpensive yet clean, looking, stain-resistant, and felt thick and sturdy. "How about this one?" He held it up for Zhou Yiming to see. "It is pretty. Then we will take this." Zhou Wenchang paid, rolled the fabric, and handed it to her. "Grandma will sew you an overblouse. You can wear something new and sharp for the exam." Zhou Yiming held the roll of cloth in her arms and watched as her father wandered around the cooperative once more. He bought a bag of candy, saying it was for Shintingwei to enjoy. Noticing Zhou Yiming staring at the candy bag, he popped a few pieces into her hand. "Here, have some." It dawned on her that, despite his gruff words, her father possessed a soft heart. Zhou Yiming peeled one candy and popped it into her father's mouth, then ate one herself. It tasted wonderfully sweet. She slipped the remaining 2 pieces into her pocket. A thought suddenly crossed her mind. System check-in. Ding. Check-in successful. Reward, 1 jean of old-fashioned sponge cakes, 1 jean of rice wafer cakes. These were all her favorites. She loved checking in at the supply and marketing cooperative these days. Times were tough, food was scarce for everyone. Her family treated her well, but their circumstances were limited. She had quite the sweet tooth. Most other check-in locations yielded non-edible items, only the cooperative regularly rewarded her with snacks. Every night, she would sneak into her room for a private feast. She had put on a little weight since arriving in this world. On the walk home, father and daughter trudged along one behind the other. Wildflowers bloomed along the ridges in late May, and butterflies flitted among the grass. After walking a while, Zhou Wenchang suddenly spoke. "Meng Meng. HM? Why do you suddenly want to sit the entrance exam for number 1 middle school?" Zhou Yiming paused in her steps and said nothing. Zhou Wenchang did not turn around, continuing forward. His voice drifted on the wind. "You never used to study this hard. Your mother and I were wondering if something had happened to shake you up." Zhou Yiming stayed silent for a few seconds, then quickened her pace to catch up with him. "Nothing happened. I just figured some things out." "What did you figure out?" "Dad, you were right before. Farm work is backbreaking, and I can't endure that kind of hardship. Studying is better, it's easier." "Silly girl, I knew that's what you'd say. If you'd listened to me sooner, things would have been simpler. Last year, I suggested you repeat the grade, and you acted as if I'd wronged you." Zhou Wenchang slowed down and glanced sideways at her. The bright afternoon sunlight flooded the farmland. Beside him walked his slender young daughter, clutching a bolt of new cloth in her hand. She kept her head down, bearing a resolve he had never seen on her face before. He said no more, only reached out and ruffled her hair, just like he had when she was little. Very well, then keep at it. You've truly grown up and become sensible. Zhou Yiming did not know how to reply. Her throat tightened, and she quickly lowered her head, pretending to admire the wildflowers by the path. In the days that followed, Zhou Yiming fell into an extremely regular routine. She rose at 5:30 every morning to recite texts until 6:30. After breakfast, she headed to school. During the day, she attended classes, worked through exercises, and discussed problems with Zhao Xiaomei and Lin Xihua. Each evening after dinner and washing up, she lay on her bed and studied inside the system space for an hour. Once she exited the space, she reviewed the knowledge points she had sorted that day before going to sleep. The system's daily quests were all study, related now, complete one set of mathematics exercises, recite and write out 3 ancient poems, create an outline of history knowledge points, and more. Zhou Yiming finished them effortlessly each day. She had possessed the system for more than a month and accumulated 23 check in points. She barely spent them lately. At first, she had wandered everywhere out of curiosity, burning her daily check in points at every new spot she found. Later, she rarely used them anywhere except the supply and marketing cooperative. School ended on Friday. With the entrance exam for number 1 middle school only 2 days away, Zhou Yiming headed home later than usual. Her nerves were frayed, so she planned to wander around to ease her anxiety and spend some of her check in points to lift her spirits. The weather had grown hot by early July. Dressed in a short, sleeved cotton blouse, she strolled slowly through town after leaving school, attempting to check in at every place she passed. The large banyan tree at the school gate, ding. Check-in successful. Reward, 2 boxes of cooling balm. A small green tin appeared in her system inventory. Summer was coming and mosquitoes would soon be rampant. This would come in handy. The town post office, ding. Check-in successful. Reward, a set of 1955 commemorative stamps. She knew little about stamp collecting, but the patterns looked exquisite, so she stored them away. The town health clinic, ding. Check-in successful. Reward, 1 roll of medical gauze, 1 small bottle of iodophor, 1 strip of painkillers. Zhou Yiming's heart leapt with joy. Medical care was limited in this era, and keeping these emergency supplies at home was incredibly practical. The town grain station, ding. Check-in successful. Reward, 5 gene of rice, 3 gene of flour, 5 gene of national grain coupons. She looked at the grain added to her inventory, feeling pleased. It was not a huge amount, but in this grain, short era, these supplies could prove vital in an emergency. The supply and marketing cooperative, ding. Check-in successful. Reward, 1 gene of white rabbit creamy candy, 2 gene of walnut shortbread. Delicious treats. She would sneak and eat them later to replenish her energy. The state-run restaurant, ding. Check-in successful. Reward, 5 servings of wontons, 1 serving of shredded pork noodles with pickled mustard greens. What a surprise. The last time she checked in here, she had only received kitchenware. This time she earned ready-made food. She marked this spot alongside the cooperative as a regular check-in location. Her last stop was the town tailor's shop. Zhou Yiming hesitated outside for a moment before pushing the door open. The shop was empty apart from an elderly tailor operating a sewing machine, who did not lift his head. She stood in a corner and silently initiated the check-in. Ding. Check-in successful. Location, Dongfeng Town Tailor Shop. Reward, 1 blue cotton dress for women, 1 sewing kit, assorted buttons. Zhou Yiming stared in surprise. A blue dress? She had no way to wear it for the time being. She stored it away to deal with later when the opportunity arose. After leaving the tailor shop, she dropped by the bookstore. She had checked in here once before and hoped for more rewards. Ding. Check-in successful. Location, Dongfeng Town Bookstore. Reward, complete junior high mathematics knowledge grades 7 to 9. Zhou Yiming's eyes lit up. This was priceless. With this, she would have no worries about junior high mathematics for 3 years. She still needed to study on her own, but learning inside the system space boosted her efficiency tenfold compared to ordinary self-study. She had checked in at the bookstore twice previously, only receiving books, notebooks, and pencils, so she had stopped coming often. She had never expected such good luck today. Content, she began walking home. She made one final stop at the Rural Credit Union at the town entrance for another check-in. The reward was 2 yuan. It was not much, but every little bit counted. She had happily used half her check in points. Once back in her room, Zhou Yimeng inventoried everything inside her system inventory: grain, cloth, medicine, study materials, stationery, cash, and more. Altogether, it amounted to quite a substantial stockpile. Between all her previous check in rewards, she now possessed 16 yuan in cash alone. She had no intention of taking any of these items out. Her family was getting by decently for now, and she had no means to explain where such goods came from. It was safer to keep them stored, ready to use if her household encountered hardship when she was older. Darkness had fallen by the time she reached home. Her family did not ask where she had been, and she retreated to her room to review steadily. She worked through the complete primary school knowledge list organized by the system to ensure she had no gaps. Next, she went over key 7th grade Chinese and mathematics content, working through several practice papers to get a feel for the exam rhythm. A little while later, Zhou Wenchang returned home holding a document stamped with an official seal. This is the introduction letter we'll use for accommodation in the city tomorrow. Your great second uncle has an acquaintance in the Eastern District who runs a small inn. With this letter, we can stay there cheaply. Zhou Yimeng took the letter, folded it neatly, and set it on the table. What time are we leaving tomorrow, Dad? Get a good night's rest. We need to set off at 8. The walk to the city takes 2 hours, and we still need to find our lodgings. We can't risk delaying your exam. Understood. Zhou Yimeng washed up early and climbed into bed, yet she tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep easily. It was not nervousness, but a jumble of thoughts swirling through her mind. She wondered what life would be like if she passed the exam, and what would happen if she failed. If she succeeded, she would attend school in the city and live in the dormitory, returning home only once a month. She had only been in this world for a little over a month, yet she had grown accustomed to coming home every afternoon to her mother's cooking, listening to Zhou Wenchang chatter, and helping Shen Tingwei sort vegetables. If she failed, she shook the thought away. She rolled onto her side and stared at the dull wooden ceiling. 7538, she called silently in her mind. Do you think I can pass? The system fell quiet for 2 seconds before its brisk electronic tone sounded. Based on the host's current knowledge reserves and practice test results, System 7538 calculates your chance of passing the special recruitment exam at 77%. Probability serves only as a reference. The final outcome depends on your performance on exam day. 77%? That's fairly high. The host need not be overly anxious. Even if you do not pass the special recruitment selection, your probability of admission to other junior high schools in the city through the general exam stands at 94%. You have ample alternatives. Zhou Yimeng let out a relieved breath. All right, I understand. Time to sleep. She closed her eyes and drifted off quickly this time. At 7:30 the next morning, Zhou Wenchang knocked on her door. Zhou Yimeng stumbled out of bed to wash up and pulled on the new cotton overshirt her grandmother had sewn. The indigo, blue fabric fit perfectly, with fine stitching lining the collar and cuffs, making her look neat and spirited. You look lovely, Shen Tingwei said as she stood beside her, straightening Zhou Yimeng's color. Don't get anxious during the exam. Answer the questions you know first, and come back to the harder ones later. I know, Mom. Zhou Wenchang slung a cloth bag over his shoulder. Inside were dry rations, water, Zhou Yimeng's exam admission ticket, and writing supplies. He called from the doorway. Let's go. If we linger, we'll reach the city right at lunchtime. Zhou Yimeng slung her school bag on and followed Zhou Wenchang out of the courtyard. She glanced back as she stepped through the gate. Shen Tingwei stood watching them, with the bright sky and the village waking up behind her. She waved. Do well on the exam. Zhou Yimeng nodded firmly and hurried to catch up with her father. The morning air carried a chill. Mist hovered over the farmland, and villagers could be seen heading out to work in the distant hamlets. Father and daughter walked one behind the other along the ridge, their footsteps clear amid the quiet. After walking for half an hour, the sun climbed higher, painting the clouds in the east pale gold. Are you tired? Zhou Wenchang glanced over his shoulder. Not at all. Then pick up the pace. We can rest once we arrive. Zhou Yimeng quickened her steps. She watched her father's back. He had changed into clean clothes that day, his hair neatly combed, walking faster than usual. He said very little, yet it was obvious how much this exam mattered to him. After nearly 2 hours of walking, they entered the city. It was almost noon. Pedestrians filled the streets and bicycles jingled past them. Zhou Yimeng gazed at the bustling streetscape, overcome with a strange sense of familiarity mixed with unfamiliarity. There were no skyscrapers in the city in this era. Most buildings stood only 2 or 3 stories tall. The roads were paved with bluestone, lined with all kinds of shops, steamed bun stalls, barber shops, general stores, shoe repair stands, brimming with everyday life. Zhou Wenchang led her to the small inn on Wudong Street in the Eastern District. The shopfront was modest, marked by a wooden sign inscribed with Public Inn. He presented the introduction letter to the landlady, a woman in her 50s. She glanced at it and readily arranged a room. Second room on the right upstairs. 5,000 yuan a night. Are you two staying? My daughter will take the bed. I'll sleep on the floor. Zhou Wenchang handed over the money. The landlady looked at Zhou Yimeng and smiled. This girl's here to sit the number 1 middle school exam, isn't she? Lots of examinees are staying with us these days. Rest well. The exam starts at 8 tomorrow morning, and the school is close enough to get there on time. The room was small, but the landlady kept it spotless. It held one bed, a desk, a washstand, and a window facing the back alley. Zhou Yimeng set down her belongings and sat on the edge of the bed to catch her breath. Zhou Wenchang poured her a cup of water. Drink some and have a bite of rations. Don't stress yourself. Get proper rest tonight. Zhou Yimeng sipped the water and pulled out her writing tools and admission ticket to double check everything. The ink bottle was tightly sealed, the writing brush had a fresh tip, the text on the admission ticket was clear, and the photograph bore the official red stamp. Once she had verified every item, her heart settled. She washed up and lay down for a nap. At 7 o'clock sharp, father and daughter left the inn for number 1 middle school. The school stood at the end of Wudong Street, less than a 10-minute walk away. The iron school gate came into view from afar, wide open. Many parents and young examinees were already gathered outside. Zhou Yimeng stood before the school gates and looked up at the characters emblazoned above them, Jiashir number 1 middle school. Gilded lettering glinted faintly in the morning sunlight. She took a deep breath and turned to Zhou Wenchang. I'm going in, Dad. Off you go. I'll wait for you here when the exam finishes. Zhou Yimeng followed the stream of examinees inside. As she crossed the gate, she looked back. Zhou Wenchang remained standing where he was and waved at her. Sunlight fell across him, illuminating his face, a mixture of worry and hope shining clear. She turned forward and stepped firmly into the examination hall. The exam lasted 4 hours without a break. When the Chinese paper was handed out, Zhou Yimeng flipped through it first, gaining a clear sense of what to expect. The questions were more standard than she had anticipated. Several classical Chinese reading and translation tasks were more challenging, but she had tackled similar exercises in the system space and would not be caught off guard. She worked steadily through each question. The essay prompt was my dream. After a moment's thought, she decided to write about becoming a teacher, educating students. She had never worked as an educator in her previous life, yet putting pen to paper came easily. She described the kind of inspiring teacher she hoped to be. The mathematics paper was slightly harder than the Chinese one. The final 2 problems were clearly beyond the primary school curriculum, covering 7th and 8th grade knowledge. Seeing them, Zhou Yimeng actually relaxed. She had learned all junior high mathematics in her past life, and she had reviewed this material intensively inside the system the previous 2 nights. She was determined to secure those points. She worked methodically through the earlier questions, leaving ample time for the last 2 problems. She reasoned through each step carefully and reviewed her answers once she finished writing the final solution. When the bell rang to collect papers, Zhou Yimeng set down her brush. Her palms were damp with sweat. She handed in her exam script. Stepping out of the hall, she realized her back was soaked through. Zhou Wenchang was exactly where she had left him at the school gate. He hurried forward when he saw her emerge. How did it go? It went all right, Zhou Yimeng smiled. I answered all the questions I knew. Zhou Wenchang did not press her further. He patted her shoulder. Let's find something to eat. The results will be posted this afternoon. At noon, the two shared a bowl of plain noodles from a roadside stall. Zhou Yimeng was ravenous and finished every last mouthful, draining the soup as well. Zhou Wenchang watched her eat, his expression a mix of relief and tender concern. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a red notice board was put up outside number 1 middle school. Zhou Yimeng squeezed through the crowd and scanned the names from the top down. In the middle of the 3rd row, She spotted 3 characters. Zhou Yimeng. Chinese. 95 points mathematics, 100 points total score, 195 points admission ranking. 19th. Zhou Yimeng stood staring at the red poster for a long while. Bright sunlight shone on the paper, making the numbers next to her name sharp and distinct. She did not shout or jump for joy. She simply stood quietly, feeling a heavy weight settle securely in her heart. People around her laughed and wept amid the noisy throng. Zhou Yimeng turned and saw Zhou Wenchang watching her from across the crowd. A broad, unrestrained grin spread across his face, stretching almost from ear to ear. She walked briskly toward him and spoke lightly once she reached his side. "I got in." Zhou Wenchang clapped her shoulder firmly, his grin wide and radiant. "Of course you did. I always knew you could do it. You take after your mother, sharp as a tack. You were just lazy before. I knew it, I always knew. All right, I'm worn out. Let's collect our things and head home." Zhou Yimeng shook her head, amused. Even in this moment, he could not resist bringing up her past laziness. On the walk back to the village, Zhou Wenchang could not stop smiling. He carried the cloth bag ahead, walking faster than he had on the trip to the city. Every few steps he turned to glance at Zhou Yimeng, unable to contain his delight. After walking half an hour beyond the city limits, he could hold back no longer and greeted every acquaintance they passed. "Old Li. I took my daughter for the number 1 middle school exam, she passed. Ranked 19th citywide. Aunt Zhang. Yes, this is my girl. She got into number 1 middle school's special recruitment class. Brother Wang. It's my daughter. She used to lack motivation, but she's grown so responsible now." Zhou Yimeng followed behind, watching her father act as if he wanted to shout the news through a megaphone. She felt equal parts amused and helpless. She hurried forward and tugged at the hem of his shirt. "Dad, don't tell everyone we meet. I haven't officially enrolled yet. It would be terribly embarrassing if something went wrong." "Nonsense. Spit that thought out. What's posted on the red board is settled. They can't take it back. Your old man is overjoyed. Can't I share the good news?" "Fine, fine. Go ahead and tell whoever you like." Zhou Yimeng surrendered and let him carry on. They stopped repeatedly along the way, stretching the 2-hour journey to nearly 3 hours before they reached the village entrance. From a distance, Zhou Yimeng saw a group of women gathered beneath the large banyan tree. Those who were not out working the field sat in the shade sewing or fanning themselves, chatting together. Her heart sank. The village gossip hub. Sure enough, every head turned toward them the moment they drew near. A stout woman with a famously loud voice called out from far away. "Hey, Wenchang, you're back. Did your daughter sit the exam? How did she get on?" Zhou Wenchang puffed out his chest at once, his voice twice as loud as when he chatted with fellow farmers in the fields. "She passed. Accepted into number 1 middle school's special recruitment class, 19th place across the whole city." Silence fell over the group beneath the banyan tree for a heartbeat, then an uproar erupted. "No way, number 1 middle school? That Zhou girl who never cared about studying. Is it true? 19th in the whole city? That's an outstanding school. Good heavens, the Zhou family's ancestors must be blessed with luck." Zhou Yimeng was surrounded by a group of elderly women, a poised smile on her face as she replied repeatedly, "Yes, yes, just got lucky, and thank you, Auntie." She felt like an exhibit, being scrutinized over and over again. Just then, an incongruous voice came from the back of the crowd. "Well now, city number 1 middle school? Is that true or not? Don't tell me you're boasting. Didn't that girl fail the junior high school entrance exam last year? How could she get into number 1 middle school this year? I, for one, don't believe it." Zhou Yimeng turned to look at the source of the voice. A tall, thin middle-aged woman stood up from beneath the shade of a tree, waving a palm leaf fan, her face wearing a half-smirk. Zhou Yimeng searched her memories. This was Lu Tsuehua, known to everyone in the village as Aunt Lu. She had been feuding with Zhou Xiaoying, Zhou Yimeng's grandmother, for years. Word had it their quarrel began over a patch of vegetable land long ago, and their rift only deepened after that. Whenever something happened to the Zhou family, Aunt Lu was sure to make snide remarks. Zhou Wenchang's smile faded a little, but he kept his temper and said, "You're joking, Aunt Lu. Number 1 middle school is a public school. The ranking list is posted out there. Admission is earned through one's own efforts." "The ranking list?" Aunt Lu let out a huff and waved her fan faster. "Does the list really say Zhou Yimeng? Is that your girl's proper name? Could it be someone with the same name? I've heard hundreds of people sat for the exam this year, and only 40 were admitted." Not a single person from our town got in. If your girl passed, why haven't we heard the school send messengers with gongs and drums to announce the good news? Several women who usually kept close company with her chimed in. That's right, it all seems too sudden. Could there be some mistake? Wenchang, you'd better double check. Don't tell me you misread the name. Zhou Yimeng stood where she was, listening to their words, her heart calm. This bit of doubt was nothing. In her past life, people had questioned every single thing about her, yet she endured it all. Eventually she grew indifferent and stopped striving, choosing to slack off instead. Snide comments from a village woman were not enough to get under her skin. She was about to speak and confirm she had seen the ranking list herself, when out of the corner of her eye she spotted a figure storming down the village path. It was Zhou Xiaoying. The old lady had obviously heard the news halfway through cooking. She still clutched a kitchen spatula in her hand, wearing an apron cobbled together from an old piece of cloth and cloth shoes. Her short legs moved rapidly, and she reached the big banyan tree in a few quick strides. She cut straight through the crowd, her gaze sharp enough to stab as it locked onto Aunt Lu. Lu Tsuehua, what did you just say? Zhou Xiaoying's voice was quiet, yet lower than usual, every word forced out between her teeth. The chattering crowd fell silent at once. Even Aunt Pang stepped back half a pace. Everyone in the village knew that Zhou Xiaoying loved gossiping at the village entrance and would normally only make cutting remarks. But when she spoke in this tone, she was truly furious. Aunt Lu was unnerved by her imposing manner, yet she refused to back down in front of so many people and shot back defiantly. What did I say? I said I don't believe your girl got into #1 middle school. Maybe you misread the list and are lying. What of it? Can I speak my mind? You don't believe it? Zhou Xiaoying let out a cold laugh and pointed the spatula right at Aunt Lu. Which one of your eyes saw us lying? The ranking list is out there for you to check, yet you open your mouth and spread rumors. Lu Tsuehua, I warn you, if you can't back up what you've said today, I won't let this rest. Having a spatula pointed at her nose hurt Aunt Lu's pride, and she raised her voice. Zhou Xiaoying, don't throw a tantrum here. I'm telling the truth. Your girl couldn't even get into junior high last year, and now she's supposedly admitted to #1 middle school? Only a fool would believe that. I reckon she either cheated or pulled strings. Bloody nonsense. Zhou Xiaoying roared, swinging the spatula vigorously. My granddaughter gets up before dawn to recite books every day and studies late into the night. Did you see that? Were you sitting in our house? You know nothing, yet you spout garbage. Lu Tsuehua, are you itching for a fight? Watch me teach you a lesson. The two elderly women faced each other like fighting cocks, one wielding a spatula and the other waving a palm leaf fan, neither willing to yield. The onlooking aunties and women quickly stepped back to create space for them. Aunt Lu's face flushed red and pale by turns. She knew she was in the wrong but refused to concede. Her eyes rolled, and she shifted her line of attack. Fine, fine. Even if she got in, so what? What's the point of a young girl studying so hard? She'll just marry into another family sooner or later. Zhou Xiaoying, have you lost your wits? You don't dote on your own grandson, yet spoil this girl rotten. She'll be nothing but a burden. Once she marries, she belongs to someone else. Zhou Yiming's heart sank. Not good. Sure enough, Zhou Xiaoying's eyes widened, and she completely lost her temper. The old lady shouted angrily, and the spatula cracked against Aunt Lu's shoulder. Aunt Lu stumbled forward unexpectedly, her palm, leaf fan slipping from her grasp. She froze for a moment, then reacted with a shriek and lunged forward to scratch her opponent. The two women in their 60s immediately grappled with each other, pulling hair and pinching arms. Their quick, vicious movements left the younger women watching in stunned silence. Aunt Pang stamped her feet anxiously. Stop fighting, stop fighting. Someone go fetch the village chief. Zhou Yiming tried to push through the crowd, but several women close to Aunt Lu blocked her path. She watched her grandmother grab a handful of Aunt Lu's hair while shouting, "You're the burden. Your whole family are burdens. My granddaughter is going to be someone important someday. What do you know?" Watching the clump of hair in her grandmother's hand and the faint traces of blood beneath her fingernails, she felt sorry for Aunt Lu. That looked painful. Her grandmother was truly formidable, an unstoppable force. Zhou Wenchang was dumbfounded. He tried to pull them apart, only to get caught up in their flailing limbs. He paced around helplessly. Mother! Stop! Aunt Lu, let go! Good heavens! As he called out, he occasionally tugged Aunt Lu to give his mother an advantage, determined to let his mother vent her anger fully. Chaos reigned. Zhou Yimeng could not get through the crowd and could only watch her grandmother unleash her fury, unchallenged by anyone. She hesitated, unsure whether to separate them or cheer. In the end, Aunt Peng ran to get the village chief, whose arrival brought the situation under control. The village chief hurried over, cringing at the sight before him and furrowing his brows. Together with two young men, he forcibly pried the two elderly women apart. Half of Aunt Lu's hair was disheveled, her collar torn. Her cheeks were bright red from slaps, marked by thin nail scratches. Zhou Xiaoying was not unscathed either. Her hair was messy, the spatula lost somewhere, and a long tear ran down her sleeve. Still, she held her chin high, brimming with fighting spirit. The village chief stood between them, glancing back and forth, rubbing his temples in exasperation. He had served as village chief for over 10 years and already had plenty on his plate. Being dragged over to mediate a fight between two older women only added to his exhaustion. I ask you too, between you, you're over 100 years old. Brawling in front of all these younger people. Does this look proper? Village chief, judge this fairly. Aunt Lu spoke first to complain. She hit me with a spatula. She called my granddaughter a burden. Zhou Xiaoying's voice boomed louder. Village chief, listen to what she said. She's jealous my granddaughter got into #1 middle school and stirs up trouble. What's wrong with me hitting her? I'll do it again if I see her. Lu Hua, just you wait. Enough, can't you let this go? The village chief sighed. He was genuinely glad to hear Zhou Yimeng had been admitted to #1 middle school, the best junior high school in the city. Even if she quit school after graduating, this achievement might help her land a decent job, and she would likely become a city resident someday. He turned to Zhou Yimeng. Girl, is it true you got into #1 middle school? Zhou Wenchang stepped forward and nodded. It's true, village chief. Results came out today. Our granddaughter ranked 19th in the city. The notice is still posted at the gate of #1 middle school. Teacher Zhang wrote her recommendation, and all registration procedures are official. After hearing Zhou Wenchang's words, the village chief stared at Zhou Yimeng for a few seconds, then nodded. He turned to Aunt Lu. There you have it. The girl earned her spot through hard work. Don't stir up trouble here anymore. Everyone, disperse and get back to your business. Aunt Lu lost all face and burst into tears, wailing that she had been attacked while the village chief took sides. She claimed she could not go on living. Her daughter-in-law rushed over after hearing the commotion. Seeing her mother-in-law sitting on the ground shouting curses at the village chief, she forced an awkward smile at the village chief. The village chief's face had turned dark, and she pulled her mother-in-law to her feet. Aunt Lu limped over to pick up her palm leaf fan and left grumbling. Even as she walked away, mutterings of young girl and burden drifted back, growing fainter until they vanished entirely. Only then did Zhou Xiaoying brush the dirt off her clothes, walk over and put an arm around Zhou Yimeng's shoulder. Her tone was gentle, a stark contrast to how she had sounded moments earlier. Ainen, are you all right? Did this scare you? I wasn't scared. Zhou Yimeng smiled. Grandma, you were amazing just now. Of course I was. Zhou Xiaoying lifted her chin proudly. She thinks I'm easy to push around just because I've kept my temper these past few years, forgetting how I dealt with her before she dares bully my granddaughter. The surrounding aunties laughed. Some teased, Aunt Zhou, you're still as fiery as ever, while others praised. Mei Ming has done so well. All your devotion to her hasn't gone to waste. Zhou Yimeng walked home with her grandmother's arm around her. The village chief glanced at the noisy crowd and said sternly, All right, everyone go home. Haven't you got meals to cook and chores to finish? If you keep loitering like this, I'll deduct your work points. At the mention of work points being deducted, the crowd scattered at once. Back home, Zhou Wenchang fetched water for Zhou Xiaoying and tidied her hair. Sitting on the threshold, once her anger faded, the old lady stroked the torn sleeve of her garment with a look of distress. Oh no, I've only had this dress for a year, what a shame. Wretched Lu Hua. Next time I see her, I'll give her another good talking, too. Zhou Yimeng fetched her mother's sewing box from the house and squatted down in front of Zhou Xiaoying. Grandma, let me sew it up for you. You know how to sew? Zhou Xiaoying eyed her doubtfully. I can try. Zhou Yimeng threaded the needle and set to work. Her stitching was far from neat, but she managed to close the tear in the sleeve. Watching her granddaughter fumble with needle and thread, Zhou Xiaoying's lips tugged upward, even as she complained. The stitches are crooked and ugly. It just needs to hold so I can wear it. That evening, the rich aroma of chicken soup drifted through the Zhou family courtyard. Zhou Wenchang had slaughtered the 2-year-old hen and simmered a big pot of soup with red dates and dried mushrooms, the fragrance spreading halfway down the lane. The whole family sat around a small table in the yard, eating meat and drinking soup. Even the usually quiet grandfather spoke more than normal. Zhou Yiming held her bowl, slowly sipping the hot soup. Recalling the scene at the village entrance that afternoon, she let out a quiet laugh. "What are you laughing at?" Zhou Xiaoying asked. "Nothing. I just think you were incredible, Grandma." "Naturally." Zhou Xiaoying put another chicken thigh into her granddaughter's bowl. "If I weren't tough, how could I have raised you so well? Eat up and head to bed early afterward." Zhou Yiming bit into the chicken. It tasted wonderful. A soft evening breeze blew outside, accompanied by the constant chirping of insects. Leaning back in her chair, she watched the sky darken and the first star come out, her heart warm and content. A light was still on in the next room. Zhou Xiaoying stood beside the bed, carefully folding the clothes she had worn that day. "Wife, why aren't you sleeping this late?" Old Wang lay in bed, watching his wife smile fondly at the garment. Zhou Xiaoying shot him a glance. "Shoo, go to sleep." She neatly folded the clothes and placed them in the most visible spot in the cabinet before locking it. Old Wang could not understand what his wife was up to. He turned over dejectedly to sleep, and soon his loud snoring filled the room. That night, lying on her bed, Zhou Yiming kept replaying the scene from the village entrance, her grandmother charging at Aunt Lu with a spatula. The more she thought about it, the more amused and touched she felt. She rolled over, ready to fall asleep, when her system panel popped up automatically. Ding! Side quest: pass the Dongfeng Town Primary School graduation exam within 2 months and gain admission to the city junior high school. Completed. Rewards: sign in points ×10, special item ×1. Items have been delivered to the backpack. Zhou Yiming's spirits lifted. She opened her backpack. Her sign in points rose from 26 to 36, and a small box icon appeared. When she clicked it, a line of text popped up. Special item: complete junior high knowledge accelerated version. Upon use, gain comprehensive knowledge covering all subjects across 3 years of junior high school for 1 month. Must be used together with the study space. What a great item. She made a mental note to use it once things quieted down. The unified graduation exam was still ahead. Although she had already been accepted by No.1 middle school, she still needed to sit for the primary school graduation exam and could not afford to slack off. She closed the panel, pulled her quilt tighter, and drifted off to sleep satisfied. The next day was Monday. Zhou Yiming got up early, ate breakfast, and headed to school. On the way, she passed several village aunties. The way they looked at her was completely different from before. Once, she had been known as the lazy girl from the Zhou family. Now she was the girl who got into #1 middle school. Uncomfortable under their stares, she quickened her pace toward town. When she entered the classroom, she saw Teacher Zhang waiting by the podium. He wore a nearly new Zhongshan suit, his hair neatly combed. Spotting Zhou Yiming walk in, his eyes lit up, and he hurried over. "Zhou Yiming, did you get in?" Zhou Yiming nodded, pulled her exam admission ticket and admission notice from her school bag, and handed them over. "I got in. I ranked 19th in the city." Teacher Zhang took the notice and read it carefully twice. He looked up, his smile growing wider until he could no longer hold back his laughter. "Excellent. Truly excellent. I knew you could do it." He patted Zhou Yiming's shoulder, his voice brimming with excitement. 19th in the city. Do you know nearly 600 people registered for the exam this year? Placing 19th is an outstanding achievement. Embarrassed by his praise, Zhou Yiming scratched her head. "I just got lucky. Some of the questions happened to be what I reviewed. Luck is part of strength." Teacher Zhang handed the notice back to her, trying to calm down, though joy lingered in his eyes. "Go take your seat first. I'll share this good news with the whole class later during lessons." Zhou Yiming sat down. Zhao Mei, the girl sitting in front, turned around at once and whispered. Meng Meng, how did you do on the #1 middle school exam? I heard my dad say your father told everyone at the village entrance you passed. Is it true? It's true. I got accepted, Zhou Yiming replied. Zhao Mei's eyes went wide. She stared at Zhou Yiming from head to toe in amazement, then suddenly raised her voice. Wow, you really made it. 19th in the whole city. Zhou Yiming, you're amazing. Her exclamation echoed across the classroom. Dozens of pairs of eyes turned toward Zhou Yiming at once. Several students left their seats to crowd around her, while others called out from across rows. Is this real? Has anyone from our school gotten into number 1 middle school in years? The classroom erupted in chatter. Zhou Yimeng, did you really get into the special admission class at number 1 middle school? 19th in the city, unbelievable. I thought you said you weren't going to study anymore. How did you get so good all of a sudden? Zhou Yimeng was surrounded by her classmates' endless questions. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Lu Jiangwo sitting diagonally forward. For once, he did not make any mocking remarks. Instead, he kept his head down and buried himself in his textbook. The school bell rang. Teacher Zhang walked to the podium, tapped the blackboard to quiet everyone, and cleared his throat. Class, before we begin today's lesson, I have an announcement. Zhou Yimeng from our class took the entrance exam for the special admission class at City Number 1 Middle School last Sunday. Out of nearly 600 candidates, she ranked 19th in the city and has received official admission. Let's congratulate her. The classroom fell silent for a heartbeat, then burst into warm applause. Zhao Mei clapped harder than anyone, her palms turning red. Zhou Yimeng stood up and bowed to everyone, her cheeks growing warm. Teacher Zhang motioned for the class to quiet down and added, "Everyone has witnessed Zhou Yimeng's progress. She failed the junior high entrance exam last year, but returned to repeat primary school. In less than 2 months, she has achieved such remarkable improvement. What does this tell us? It shows that as long as you work hard, it is never too late. I hope all of you will take her as an example and perform your best in the upcoming unified exam." After class, many students gathered around Zhou Yimeng to talk. Some offered sincere congratulations. Others asked curiously about the exam content, and a few muttered sourly that she was just lucky. Zhou Yimeng simply smiled and responded to all of them. She noticed Lin Shua never came over. He sat alone by the window reading his textbook, his expression calm and distant. Zhou Yimeng thought for a moment, walked over, and sat down beside him. "What's wrong? You don't look happy." Lin Shua pushed up her glasses and managed a weak smile. "Nothing. Congratulations. Did you fail to get into number 1 middle school?" Lin Shua fell silent for a few seconds, then nodded gently. "I missed the mark by 2 points. 170, 6 points, 40, third place." She paused, her voice softening. "I knew my chances were slim before the exam, but I still gave it a shot. I never imagined I'd fall short by such a narrow margin." Zhou Yimeng stared at her profile, unsure how to comfort her. She knew how hard Lin Shua had worked. She arrived in the classroom earliest and left latest every day, kept immaculate notes, and never chatted during breaks. Always buried in her books. She wanted to get into a good school more than anyone. "There's still the unified entrance exam," Zhou Yimeng said. "Even if you weren't selected through number 1 middle school's special recruitment, you can still gain admission via the unified exam. You can also apply to other junior high schools in the city. Number 2, number 3, and number 4 middle schools are all excellent, hardly any worse than number 1. Lin Shua lifted her head to glance at her. Her eyes were reddening, yet she held back her tears. She sniffled and nodded firmly. "I know. I won't lose heart. The unified exam is less than a week away. I'll push harder and make it for sure. Keep going. Let's meet in the city then." Lin Shua was cheered by those words. She pushed up her glasses, a genuine smile finally tugging at her lips. "All right, see you in the city." Zhou Yimeng patted her shoulder and stood up to return to her seat. As she walked past Zhao Xiaomei tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Meng Meng, Lin Shua didn't get into number 1 middle school? Her grades are so good, and she still missed it by 2 points. Yeah, just barely. But she still has a chance in the unified exam." Zhao Xiaomei sighed. "Studying is really tough. I'll probably only score around 150 in the unified exam. If I try my best, maybe I can get into the town's junior high school." "You scored 159 in the last mock test. Put in more effort for the unified exam, and you'll be fine." Zhao Xiaomei nodded vigorously, but Zhou Yimeng could see the lingering uncertainty in her eyes. In this era, for girls, especially those from rural families, finishing primary school was already considered a privilege. To continue further schooling depended not only on grades, but also on their family's willingness to support them. She did not know the village chief well, but she had heard Shen Tingwei mention that Zhao Xiaomei's mother favored boys over girls. She could only hope Xiaomei's wish would come true. Classes proceeded as usual in the afternoon. Sitting by the window, Zhou Yimeng alternated between watching the blackboard and gazing outside. A quiet sense of peace settled over her. Her spot at number 1 middle school was secured. All that remained was to finish her primary school graduation exam, enjoy a proper rest over the summer vacation, and wait to start at the new school in September. When school ended and she packed up her school bag to leave, Lu Jiangwo walked past her. He paused briefly and muttered quietly, "Congratulations." His voice was so faint that Zhou Yimeng almost thought she had imagined it. By the time she looked up, Lu Jiangwo had hurried out of the classroom without turning back. She froze for a moment, then smiled to herself. He might be sharp-tongued, but deep down he still had some decency. On the walk home, the setting sun gilded the weeds along the ridge path. Zhou Yimeng wandered along the track. The breeze brushing against her face carried the scent of soil and fresh grass. She took a deep breath, feeling as if the air tasted sweeter than usual. Ding! Daily task completed. Reward: 1 check in point. Zhou Yimeng checked her system panel. Her check in points had risen to 37. After a moment's thought, she tapped the activation button for Junior High All Subjects Knowledge Crash Course, planning to use it once she entered the study space that night. When she reached home, the aroma of cooked food drifted out of the courtyard. Zhou Xiaoying was busy at the stove. Seeing her return, she called out loudly, "Hey, Nan, you're back. Wash your hands and get ready for dinner. Your father caught a fish in the river today. The soup smells wonderful." "Okay, Grandma. I love fish soup." The next few days passed plainly yet fulfillingly. Zhou Yimeng attended classes, listened to lectures and worked through exercises as usual. No different from when she was preparing for the No. 1 middle school special recruitment. The only change was her more relaxed mindset. She no longer needed to stay up late working on practice questions. Each night in the system space, she focused on previewing junior high school material. Junior high school in this era was far more challenging than primary school. A new subject, Russian, would be added, a language she knew nothing about. What was more, the education system followed the Soviet model. Apart from PE, music and art, there were reportedly 17 subjects in total. Every night, Zhou Yimeng immersed herself in studying, overwhelmed by the volume of knowledge. On Wednesday, the class sat another mock exam. As usual, Zhou Yimeng took first place in the class, 3 points ahead of Lin Shuhua. Lin Shuhua was clearly pushing herself to the limit, with dark circles under her eyes, yet her spirits were higher than before. A determined focus radiated from her as she worked through the exam paper. "You look ready to devour the exam paper," Zhou Yimeng teased as she watched Lin Shuhua holding her test script. Lin Shuhua pushed up her glasses and offered a rare smile. "I've thought it through. The unified exam is easier than the special recruitment test. If I avoid careless mistakes, I stand a good chance of securing a regular admission spot at No. 1 middle school." "You absolutely can. I believe in you, Lin Shuhua." On Thursday afternoon, Teacher Zhang handed out the admission tickets for the unified exam. The exam venue was Dongfeng Middle School in town, not far from the primary school, a 20-minute walk away. The exam was scheduled for Saturday and Sunday. Zhou Yimeng carefully put away her ticket. She paused beside Zhao Xiaomei's desk. Zhao Xiaomei was staring blankly at her admission ticket, her fingers picking absently at the edge of the paper. "Nervous?" Zhou Yimeng asked. Zhao Xiaomei lifted her head and forced a smile. "A little. Last night I dreamed I couldn't find my pen in the exam hall." "Don't worry. You've practiced countless questions. You'll do well." Zhou Yimeng patted her shoulder. Zhao Xiaomei murmured an acknowledgement and dropped her gaze back to the ticket. School finished early on Friday. Teacher Zhang told everyone to head home early and rest well. As Zhou Yimeng walked out of the classroom, she glanced back. Lin Shuhua was still seated at her desk flipping through notes. Zhao Xiaomei stood on the corridor staring into the distance. For once, Lu Jiangwo had not rushed off early, hunched over his desk scribbling away. She turned forward, slung her school bag over her shoulder and left. When she arrived home, Shen Tingwei had already prepared all her exam supplies. Writing brushes, ink, scratch paper, a water jug, and 2 grain cakes were neatly arranged inside a clean cloth bag. "Your father and I will walk you to the exam hall tomorrow." Shen Tingwei handed her the bag. "Your father said the exam is important, so he took half a day off work." "There's no need. It's not far, I can go by myself," Zhou Yimeng said. "We won't feel at ease letting you go alone." Shen Tingwei waved her hand firmly. "That's settled. Go to bed early." At 7 o'clock on Saturday morning, the whole family got up earlier than usual. Shen Tingwei cooked thick congee, steamed 2 grain buns, and even fried an egg, a rare treat. After breakfast, Zhou Yiming slung the cloth bag over her shoulder and set off with Zhou Wencheng and Shin Tingwei. A crowd had already gathered at the school gate. Some students were accompanied by their parents, while others came in groups. Zhou Yiming stopped at the entrance, looked around, and silently called out in her mind, "Check in." A system notification popped up. Ding! Check-in successful. Location: Dongfeng Middle School. Reward: Hero Brand Fountain Pen. Zhou Yiming's eyes lit up slightly. The fountain pen rested quietly inside her backpack. It had a black barrel and silver cap, elegant and sturdy. She did not take it out straight away, planning to use it only after the exams finished. "Off you go," Zhou Wencheng urged beside her. "Come out once you finish, and we'll wait for you here." Zhou Yiming nodded and turned to enter the exam venue. Sure enough, the unified exam papers were less difficult than the special recruitment test. Reading passages in Chinese were shorter. Classical Chinese translation questions were based on primary school coursework. The essay prompt was an unforgettable incident. Zhou Yiming decided to write about listening to elders tell stories while enjoying the cool summer evenings in the village. It was not an outstanding piece, but steady and coherent. Mathematics was even simpler, consisting mostly of question types she had practiced countless times. The final two application problems required careful thought, yet she worked out the solutions without too much trouble. When the bell signaling the end of the last exam rang, Zhou Yiming set down her pen and let out a soft breath. The exam papers were collected. She stood up, stretching her stiff shoulders, and followed the stream of students out of the exam hall. More people crowded the school gate than in the morning. Groups of parents waited about. Zhou Yiming scanned the crowd, but could not spot Zhou Wencheng and Shin Tingwei. Instead, she saw a familiar figure, her grandmother Zhou Xiaoying, standing in the most noticeable spot at the gate, craning her neck to peer inward. Zhou Yiming was surprised and hurried over. "Grandma, why are you here?" Zhou Xiaoying broke into a wide smile the moment she saw her. She reached out to take the cloth bag. "I came to pick you up. Your parents went to the fields. They said the exam matters, but I had nothing to do, so I came over." "How did it go?" "It went well. I answered all the questions." "That's wonderful." Zhou Xiaoying tugged her forward. "Let's head home. I've braised pork waiting for you. Your father sold his woven baskets yesterday and earned some money, so I bought half a gene of pork to nourish you." Zhou Yiming let her grandmother lead her away from the bustling school gate. She glanced at the cloth bag now carried by Zhou Xiaoying and smiled quietly. The bright June sunlight poured down on the dirt road, and the air carried the scent of ripening wheat. Zhou Xiaoying walked ahead. Years of labor had left her slightly stooped, yet she moved quickly on her short legs, chattering nonstop. "I'll steam you an egg custard later. I'll make another soup tonight. I picked 2 cucumbers from the garden this morning to make the cold salad you wanted." Zhou Yiming followed closely, listening quietly, a constant smile on her lips. "Grandma," she spoke suddenly, "why did you come to fetch me?" "Father said they would see me to the exam." Zhou Xiaoying glanced back and rolled her eyes playfully. "You're my granddaughter. Can't I come meet you? Besides, your father is careless. What if he loses track of you after the exam? Coming myself is much more reliable." Zhou Yiming laughed out loud. Wheat waves rustled on both sides of the path in the wind, and cooking smoke curled upward from distant village houses. Zhou Yiming quickened her pace to catch up, slipping her arm through her grandmother's. "Let's go home, Grandma. I know you spoil me the most. Time for braised pork." 3 days after the unified exam ended, Zhou Yiming was squatting in the yard helping Shin Tingwei sort green beans when a commotion came from the village entrance. She looked up and saw a bicycle bumping along the ridge path, its bell jingling nonstop. The rider was a man in his 30s. On the back seat sat a woman with short, straight, cut hair, her legs angled sideways over the frame, clutching a bulging cloth bag in her arms. 2 young men ran behind the bicycle, the elder around 20 and the younger 14 or 15. Zhou Yiming squinted and recognized them, her paternal aunt Wang Aihua, her uncle Zhao Chang, followed by her 2 male cousins. Before she could call out, Zhou Xiaoying rushed out of the house, still wearing her apron and holding a bunch of green onions. Her voice carried halfway across the village. "Aihua, why didn't you send word before coming back?" Wang Aihua jumped down from the bicycle and strode over to Zhou Xiaoying, grinning widely. "Mother, I missed everyone. I took the chance to come visit while I have a few days off." She scanned the courtyard, her gaze landing on Zhou Yiming, and her eyes lit up. "Well, if it isn't our little top scholar." Zhou Yiming stood up, wiped her hands on her apron, and greeted them one by one. Aunt, uncle, elder cousin, younger cousin. Wang Aihua walked over and looked her up and down before pinching her cheek gently. Your skin has lightened a lot. You look far better than the little streaked girl last time I saw you. I heard you got into #1 middle school, ranked 19th in the city. Yes, I was lucky. Lucky nonsense. You earned it. Wang Aihua beamed and called toward the courtyard. Father, mother. You've raised an outstanding granddaughter. I heard about the new special recruitment scheme at #1 middle school. Meng Meng is the only one from our town accepted this year. I knew it had to be my niece. The courtyard filled with noise. Grandfather stepped out of the house, a rare smile tugging at his lips as he nodded toward his daughter. The two cousins moved closer. The elder cousin Zhao Jiangwo was 19, apprenticed at a timber factory in town. The younger, Zhao Jianye, was 15, still in the 5th grade of primary school. Zhao Jiangwo stood a head taller than Zhou Yimeng, around 1.75 meters, with a square, honest face. He scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Little sister, you're amazing. I couldn't even get into junior high and now I turn screws at the factory. There's nothing wrong with turning screws. Factory workers are honored, Zhou Yimeng smiled. Factory jobs were stable iron rice bowls in this era, sought after by countless people in the years ahead. As they talked, footsteps sounded outside the gate. Zhou Yimeng turned to see her uncle Wang Wujie's family approaching. Uncle walked at the front, lean and weathered from work on the construction site. He had been seconded to help keep records for a bridge building team in the neighboring brigade for the past 2 months, returning only the previous night with her 2 elder male cousins. He wore a clean shirt for the occasion. Her aunt followed behind carrying a bowl of cooked meat, with Wang Jifeng and Wang Jiu walking on either side. Wenchang. Word is Meng Meng got into #1 city middle school. Uncle called before he even stepped through the gate. Despite his stern features, excitement edged his voice. Zhou Wenchang came out to greet them, setting aside their usual bickering and ushering them into the yard with a smile. Brother, news travels fast. They even heard about it at the construction site. Of course. Uncle clapped Zhou Wenchang on the shoulder as he entered. I got back last night and heard Aunt Peng talking about it at the village entrance. Our family has produced a scholar. He turned to Zhou Yimeng, looked her over, then pulled an envelope from his pocket and held it out. Take this. It's a congratulatory gift from your uncle. Zhou Yimeng hesitated and did not reach for it. Uncle, I can't accept this. Take it. Uncle pressed the envelope into her hand. It's not a large sum, just a token of my good wishes. Getting into a good school is no easy feat when you move to the city. Spend what you need and don't deprive yourself. Zhou Yimeng stared at the heavy envelope in her hand, guessing it held 300 or 400 yuan. Her throat tightened. She looked up at her uncle, then at her smiling aunt and 2 cousins. She wanted to say thank you, yet after moving her lips, she simply nodded firmly. Everyone, don't just stand around, Zhou Xiaoying boomed, commanding the room. Aihua, Wujia, all of you stay for dinner. Wenchang, go buy a fish from the village shop. Jifeng, Jiu, go fetch a jar of pickles your grandfather preserved out back. Old man, bring out that bottle of wine you stashed away. Grandfather was smoking his long, stemmed pipe and shot her a displeased glance. I haven't hidden any wine. Don't pretend. I saw you tucking the bottle your old friend gave you under the cabinet, Zhou Xiaoying said confidently. Grandfather huffed, but did not argue. He stood up and walked into the house. The courtyard buzzed like New Year celebrations. Shen Tingwei rushed about at the stove, with Aunt Wang and Wang Aihua rolling up their sleeves to help. The clink of pots and pans and bursts of laughter drifted from the kitchen. Zhou Wenchang sat at the stone table chatting with his elder brother, while the 3 younger boys chased the yard's speckled hen back and forth, sending it fluttering around the courtyard. Zhou Yimeng sat on the threshold watching the lively crowd, feeling a little dazed. In her past life, she had lived alone in Beijing. She only video called her parents occasionally. She dreaded family gatherings as a socially reserved person, never staying more than a week during holidays, and had almost no contact with relatives. She had always thought bustling family warmth belonged to other people, never to her. Sitting here now, listening to kitchen chatter and laughter filling the yard, she realized what it felt like to be surrounded by family. Perhaps she had shut herself off far too much before. At some point, Wang Aihua moved to sit beside Zhou Wenchang and lowered her voice. Wenchang, I want to ask you something. How much is tuition at #1 middle school? I heard boarders also pay for meals. Can the family afford it? Zhou Wenchang thought for a moment and answered honestly. Tuition itself isn't expensive, 3 yuan a semester. Boarding fees add roughly 1 yuan each month. You also bring grain to exchange for meal tickets at the school. Wang Aihua nodded and fell silent briefly. Come to me if you run into financial trouble. I work at the sub-district office. I don't earn much, but I can help out a little. Education matters, don't let money stand in her way. She slipped 500 yuan into her younger brother's pocket. You're not young anymore. Now that Ming Ming is determined to study hard, you need to settle down and stop being so aimless. Do you understand? Zhou Wenchang stared at his elder sister's face, features similar to his own, earnest and sincere. She had always looked out for him since childhood. He did not know how to respond, only nodding and saying hoarsely, "Thank you, eldest sister." No need for thanks. We're family. Wang Aihua patted his head just as she had when they were children, then stood up to return to the kitchen. At lunchtime, 2 tables were put together in the yard, filled with the whole family. Zhou Xiaoying sliced up a large plate of cured meat she had saved for ages. Zhou Wenchang went into the village and bought a big grass carp to stew with tofu. The old man finally took out the bottle of white liquor he had hidden for half a year and poured a small cup for each of the men. The conversation at the table kept circling around Zhou Yimeng. After a couple of sips of wine, eldest uncle grew talkative. If I'd had the chance to go to school back then, I wouldn't be toiling away in the fields exposed to wind and sun. Our family hasn't produced a scholar in generations. Ming Ming, you've really brought honor to all of us. None of your elder brothers have a head for studying, but luckily you've come into your own, and it's not too late. Keep going to junior high, then university. As long as you want to keep studying, we'll support you all the way. For once, Zhou Wenchang did not argue with his elder brother. He held his wine glass and grinned. That's right. She takes after me, she's clever. Don't make me laugh. Takes after you? She gets it from your wife. Your wife could read and write long before she married you, while you couldn't even recognize your own name back then. Eldest uncle wasted no time calling his bluff. I learned later. I can write now. Zhou Wenchang's pride was wounded. Ha ha, I still remember that recipe scribbled down. Your handwriting was hideous. The whole table burst into laughter. Sitting in the corner, Zhou Yimeng held her bowl and sipped her soup slowly. Watching the lively, boisterous scene before her, she could not stop the smile tugging at her lips. After the meal, eldest aunts and eldest uncles' families helped clear the bowls and chopsticks. They chatted in the yard for a while before heading home. As she was leaving, eldest aunt took Zhou Yimeng's hand and urged her repeatedly. Ming, you know where my home in town is. Come find me anytime if you run into trouble. Zhou Yimeng stood at the gate and watched eldest aunt sit on the back of a bicycle. The family of 4 gradually vanished down the path between the farmlands. Eldest uncle's family left soon after. Before walking off, he patted Zhou Yimeng's head and said, "Study hard and make us proud." Once the yard fell quiet again, the sun had already dipped westward. Zhou Xiaoying sat on the threshold rubbing her aching lower back, muttering, "I'm getting old. I've been busy all day and can barely straighten up." Yet a satisfied smile lingered on her face. Zhou Yimeng walked over and sat down beside her, resting her head on her grandmother's shoulder. "Grandma. I'm really happy today." Zhou Xiaoying stroked her hair. She did not speak, only patted her head gently. The setting sun stretched their shadows long across the rough earthen ground of the yard. In the distance came the barking of dogs and the laughter of children, while cooking smoke curled upward from the rooftops of every household. Zhou Yimeng closed her eyes and breathed in the lingering aroma of the meal, her heart calm and peaceful. Once the bustling weekend ended, the village returned to its usual quiet. Every morning, Zhou Yimeng got up to help Shen Tingwei with odd jobs. The rest of her time was spent reading or sitting in the yard, soaking up the sun and daydreaming. She was quite content with this lazy rhythm of life. One morning, she was sitting on the threshold reading a junior high Russian textbook she had copied out from her system space. The curvy letters made her head spin. They looked like random scribbles. She had learned English in her previous life, and adapting to Russian all of a sudden was proving difficult. "Granddaughter." Zhou Xiaoying's voice called from the kitchen. "Run to the village entrance for me. I heard staff from the credit union are there putting up a notice." Zhou Yimeng set down her book, rubbed her eyes, and stood up. "What's the notice about?" "I don't know. Go have a look and come tell me," Zhou Xiaoying replied, busy working over the stove without lifting her head. Zhou Yimeng agreed, brushed the dust off her trousers, and left the yard heading for the village entrance. A crowd had already gathered beneath the huge banyan tree at the village gate, more people than when she had come home after her exam. Zhou Yimeng squeezed through the crowd and saw a young man in a Zhongshan suit pasting a red notice onto the wall. Villagers stood around him, firing questions one after another. "Comrade, what does this writing say?" Aunt Pang's loud voice cut through the chatter. "It means the money we're using now is going to be replaced," the young man in the Zhongshan suit explained after finishing pasting the notice and turning to face everyone. "The government has issued an official document. New currency will enter circulation starting March this year, and old notes must be exchanged for new ones within a set period." News reached our village a little late. Bank staff will visit each village in the next few days to handle exchanges collectively. Everyone just needs to bring their old money to the village office then. "Exchange? What's the rate?" 10,000 units of the old currency for 1 unit of the new currency, the young man answered patiently. "For example, if you have 100,000 old units, you can exchange them for 10 new units. The exchange rate is 10,000 to 1. An uproar rippled through the crowd. "What? 10,000 for 1? How little will I have left after exchanging my savings?" This is a national regulation, the same for everyone. The new currency has smaller denominations and will make calculations much easier. "What about the money I've saved in deposit? I've been putting it away for years." "Now don't panic. Old currency is still valid for the time being, so everyone has time to exchange. Credit union staff will arrive in the village in a couple of days to process everything together." Standing at the back of the crowd, Zhou Yimeng quickly did the math in her head. She had more than 16 new units of cash stored in her system backpack, along with grain tickets, cloth tickets, and other vouchers she had obtained through daily check-ins. These coupons should still remain valid after the new currency was issued. The new currency she earned from system check-ins did not need exchanging. However, she still held more than 10,000 old units in pocket money given to her by her grandparents that she had not spent. And she could exchange those now. Lost in thought, she suddenly heard someone crying nearby. She turned and saw Aunt Lou squatting by the banyan tree roots, clutching a stack of crumpled banknotes. Tears dripped steadily onto the ground. "I've saved this money half my life, penny by penny from selling eggs. How little will I get after exchanging it?" The other women standing around exchanged uneasy glances. Some wanted to comfort her, but hesitated, knowing how quarrelsome she usually was. Watching Aunt Lou wiping away tears, Zhou Yimeng felt a twinge of sympathy. The woman had a sharp tongue and once fought with her grandmother, but at the end of the day she was just an ordinary rural woman who had scrimped and saved every cent she had. Still, the currency reform was a positive change. The old denominations were unwieldy, and everyone would grow used to the new money soon enough. She said nothing and turned for home. When she got back, Zhou Xiaoying was already waiting in the yard, apron clutched in her hands. "Well, what was the notice about?" Zhou Yimeng told her grandmother everything about the currency exchange. A range of emotions crossed Zhou Xiaoying's face once she heard the news, before she stamped her foot lightly. "Oh child, I still have tens of thousands stowed in my cabinet. Help me work out how much new money that will make." Zhou Yimeng followed her grandmother into the house and watched as the elderly woman retrieved her hidden savings from every nook and cranny. Inside a pillowcase, up on the beam, and deep in a compartment at the bottom of the big wooden cabinet, she pulled out an iron tin box. When she opened it, neat stacks of banknotes of varying denominations lay inside, alongside several old silver dollars. All the money was piled together into a small heap. "Grandma, where did you get so much money?" "Saved bit by bit. From your grandfather selling woven baskets, your father's work wages, your mother selling eggs, plus money eldest uncle and eldest aunt gave during festivals. I kept all of it. I planned to take it out when you went to university, and now we have to exchange it." Zhou Yimeng helped her grandmother count the money. Altogether it came to more than 548,000 old units, equivalent to 54 yuan and 80 jiao in new currency. It was not a huge sum, but a substantial reserve for their family. "Grandma, don't worry. The new money has the same purchasing power, only the numbers look smaller." Zhou Xiaoying wrapped the money up again and sighed. "I know. It just feels unsettling. The money we've been using is being replaced all of a sudden." She paused and looked at Zhou Yimeng. "By the way, granddaughter, do you have any savings? Exchange them soon, don't put it off." Zhou Yimeng nodded. "I'll head over to the village office once the credit union staff arrive." Early the next morning, a further notice was posted at the village office. Credit union workers would come to the village on Wednesday morning to process exchanges centrally. Villagers only needed to bring their old currency and household registration books. Zhou Yiming calculated her own savings. She had 13,200 old units, exchangeable for 1 yuan and 32 jiao of new currency. Although the figure seemed tiny, its actual value stayed the same. She planned to exchange it promptly during the collective exchange and then store the new notes in her system backpack. First thing Wednesday morning, a long queue stretched across the yard of the village office. Men, women, and children had all turned up, clutching cloth bundles, tin boxes, and handkerchiefs holding varying amounts of money. Normally, thrifty elders did not bother hiding their savings now. As they waited, they chatted with one another. How much have you saved? Oh, not much, just tens of thousands. Same here, I'll be lucky to get 2 new yuan after exchange. Zhou Yiming stood halfway along the queue. Directly in front of her were Aunt Lu and her daughter-in-law. Aunt Lu was not picking fights with anyone today. She waited quietly, hugging a blue cloth parcel tightly to her chest. Her expression a mix of anxiety and distress. When it was Aunt Lu's turn, her hands shook as she unfolded the parcel, revealing neatly bundled stacks of old notes, large and small, clearly accumulated over many years. The staff counted slowly for a long time before speaking. Total, 267,400 old units, equal to 26 yuan and 74 jiao new currency. Aunt Lu took the crisp new banknotes, her hands still trembling. She turned them over and over repeatedly before carefully tucking them into an inner pocket of her clothing. As she walked past Zhou Yiming, she paused. Her mouth opened as if to speak, then closed again. She said nothing and hurried away with her head down. Watching her retreating figure, Zhou Yiming thought the woman did not seem nearly as unpleasant as before. When Zhou Yiming's turn came, she handed over the pocket money her family had given her and received brand new notes worth 1 yuan and 32 jiao. She examined them carefully. The new renminbi was far more refined than the old currency. Printed with images of workers, peasants, and soldiers, bright in color and pleasant to the touch. She put the money away and left the village office yard. Back home, Zhou Xiaoying sat in the yard, repeatedly inspecting her newly exchanged money, muttering to herself. These small notes replace whole stacks of old money. We'll have to watch every penny we spend from now on. Grandma, it works just the same. Only the denominations are smaller. Zhou Yiming sat down beside her. I understand. I just need time to get used to it. Zhou Xiaoying carefully placed the money back into the iron tin box, locked it inside the cabinet, and clapped her hands. Later, when I go to the market, I'll stop by the supply and marketing cooperative to see how change works with the new money. I don't want anyone cheating me. Zhou Yiming smiled at her grandmother's prudent manner. What are you laughing at? Nothing. I just think you know how to live wisely, Grandma. Naturally, Zhou Xiaoying lifted her chin and turned to the kitchen to start cooking. In the evening, Zhou Yiming sat reading beneath the shade of a roadside tree when she overheard Aunt Lu talking to her daughter-in-law from the neighboring courtyard. Mother, we only get this little amount of new money. How are we supposed to get by? Get by? Spend sparingly. Do you think your mother is foolish? We still need to save what we can. That's how people live their lives. All right. Can we stew an egg for Xiaobao tonight then?